3 days after open heart surgery, I sent a simple text asking my family to come pick me up and take me home. My son replied, "The football quarter is almost over. Take a taxi, Dad." They thought that message was the full stop to everything. By the time they started calling, I was already gone. They had no idea that a single signature would destroy their lives. If you enjoy deep emotional stories that explore family choices and consequences, consider liking this video and subscribing to stay connected. I'd also love to know where you're listening. From your comments, help these stories reach others who might need them. Just a brief note before we continue, this narrative includes dramatized elements used to highlight themes and lessons. Any similarities are coincidental, while the message is intended to encourage reflection. The automatic doors of Mercy Hospital slid open, hitting me with a blast of sterile air conditioning that made my chest ache. I sat in the wheelchair, clutching a small plastic bag containing my personal effects. My wallet, my keys, and a photo of my late wife, Coretta. The incision down the center of my chest felt like it was on fire. It had only been 4 days since the surgeons sawed through my sternum to repair a valve that had kept me alive for 7 decades. Every breath was a labor. Every movement sent a sharp electric shock radiating through my ribs. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. The lobby was bustling with activity. I saw a young mother rushing to greet her husband, handing him a balloon that said, "Get well soon." I saw a teenage boy helping his grandfather into a car, carefully handling the old man's walker. I saw love in action. I saw duty. And I sat there invisible, tightening my grip on my phone. I opened the group chat named the Bennett family. It used to be active. Coretta used to send Bible verses and recipes. Now it was mostly just me sending updates that went ignored. I typed slowly, my fingers thick and calloused from 40 years of working as a mechanic. The doctor cleared me for discharge. "Can anyone pick me up? I am at the main entrance." I hit send. The message was marked as delivered immediately. Then read. I waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The pain in my chest was throbbing in time with my heartbeat. I shifted in the wheelchair, trying to find a position that didn't make me want to scream. I watched the 3 dots appear on the screen, indicating someone was typing. Then the dots disappeared. Then they appeared again. Finally, a message from Tyrell popped up. "Dad, call an Uber. It is the 4th quarter and the score is tied. I cannot leave right now." I stared at the screen. Tyrell was 32 years old. He was my only son. I had paid for his college tuition by working double shifts at the garage, coming home with grease permanently stained into my nail beds. I had paid off his credit card debt 3 times. I had let him and his wife move into the house I owned free and clear because he said he needed to save money while he looked for a job. He had been looking for a job for 2 years, and now he could not leave a football game to pick up the man who gave him life. Before I could process the sting of his rejection, another message appeared. It was from Paige, my daughter-in-law. She was 28 with pale skin and eyes that always seemed to be assessing the value of everything in my house. She had never liked me. She tolerated me because I paid the bills. "Honestly, Langston, maybe you should ask the doctors to keep you another week. The house has been so peaceful without that hacking cough of yours keeping us up. We are finally getting some sleep. Just take a taxi." I lowered the phone. The words blurred as my eyes watered, not from sadness, but from a sudden sharp rage that momentarily eclipsed the physical pain in my heart. They were in my house. The house Coretta and I had bought in 1985. The house we had scrubbed and painted and renovated with our own hands. They were eating my food, watching the 85-inch television I had bought using the high-speed internet I paid for, and they could not be bothered to drive 20 minutes to bring me home. They did not just see me as an inconvenience. They saw me as a piece of furniture that made too much noise, a broken appliance that they wished they could leave on the curb. "Mr. Bennett." I looked up. A nurse was standing there. She looked young, maybe the same age as Paige, but her eyes held a warmth that my daughter-in-law had never shown. She looked at my phone, which was still glowing in my lap, and then at my face. She saw the heavy realization settling in my eyes. She knew. Nurses always know when a patient has nowhere to go. "Is your ride delayed?" she asked gently. I cleared my throat, fighting the urge to cough because I could hear Paige's voice in my head mocking me. "Something like that," I rasped. "We can call social services, Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice lowering to a whisper so the people around us would not hear. "They have a voucher program for seniors who do not have family support. We can arrange a medical transport. It might take a few hours, but they will get you home safely." social services. The words hit me harder than the surgery. I was not a charity case. I was Langston Bennett. I was the head deacon at my church for 15 years. I was the man who fixed half the cars in this neighborhood. I had savings. I had dignity. Or at least I thought I did. No, I said, my voice firm despite the weakness in my body. I do not need charity. But sir, you just had major surgery. You should not be alone. I am not alone. I lied. I told them not to come. I did not want to ruin the game. The nurse looked at me with profound pity. That look was the final straw. I hated pity. I hated that my son had reduced me to a pitiful old man in a wheelchair lying to a stranger to protect his own pride. I pushed myself up from the wheelchair. The pain in my sternum was blinding like a hot knife twisting in the center of my chest. I gritted my teeth and forced my legs to hold my weight. I would not let them see me weak. I would not let Tyrell and Paige win. Mr. Bennett, please sit down, the nurse urged, reaching out to steady me. I am fine, I snapped, pulling my arm away. I am walking out of here. I took a step, then another. I walked toward the sliding glass doors, clutching my small plastic bag against my chest as if it were a shield. I stepped out into the humid afternoon air. The city noise was overwhelming, sirens' horns, the chatter of people. I walked to the curb, raising my hand to hail a taxi. My arms shook. My knees felt like water. But I stood there straight-backed, refusing to lean on the wall. A yellow cab pulled up. The driver was an older man with a gray beard and kind eyes. He looked at me, saw the hospital bracelet still on my wrist, saw the way I was holding my chest, and he jumped out to open the door for me. Easy does it, brother, he said, guiding me into the back seat. Take your time. I collapsed onto the vinyl seat, gasping for air. The physical exertion had nearly knocked me out. Where to, the driver asked, looking at me in the rearview mirror. I gave him my address. It was the address of the home I had built, the home where my wife had died in my arms, the home that was currently occupied by two parasites who wished I would never return. As the taxi pulled away from the hospital, I took my phone out of my pocket. I looked at the chat one last time. Tyrell had sent a gif of a football player dancing. Paige had reacted with a heart emoji. They were celebrating. They were happy I was gone. They thought I was just a senile old man who would take the abuse and come back begging for scraps of affection. They thought they had the power. I looked out the window as the city rolled by. I touched the scar beneath my shirt. My heart was weak, yes. It was stitched together and bruised, but it was still beating. And as long as it was beating, I was still the man of my house. I opened my banking app. I checked the balance. I checked the deed to my house, which I kept a digital copy of in my secure folder. Everything was in my name. Everything. I turned off my phone. Driver, I said, my voice gaining a sudden cold strength. Yeah, stop at that convenience store up ahead. The one on the corner of Martin Luther King Boulevard. You sure that is a rough spot, the driver warned. I am sure, I said. I need to buy a few things, and I am feeling lucky. I did not know it then, but that stop would be the most important decision of my life. I was about to walk into a situation that would test my heart more than the surgery ever did, and I was about to buy a piece of paper that would turn the tables on Tyrell and Paige so violently they would never see it coming. The taxi driver hesitated but pulled over. I needed water. I needed aspirin. And for some reason I felt the spirit of Coretta whispering to me. She used to play the lottery every Tuesday. She never won more than $10, but she always said, Langston, you never know when the Lord is going to bless you. I stepped out of the taxi, ignoring the pain, and walked into the store. The air smelled of stale coffee and cleaning fluid. I did not know that in the next 10 minutes I would be staring down the barrel of a gun and holding a ticket worth $80 million. But right now, all I knew was that I was going home to a war, and I intended to win. The taxi smelled of pine air freshener and stale cigarette smoke, but to me it smelled like freedom. The driver, whose license on the dashboard identified him as Allie, glanced at me in the rearview mirror with eyes full of genuine concern. He had dark skin and the weary look of a man who worked 14 hours a day to feed people he loved. He reminded me of myself 20 years ago, back when I would come home with grease under my fingernails and my back aching just to put food on the table for Tyrell. You okay back there, sir? Allie asked, his voice thick with an accent I could not place. Maybe Somali or Ethiopian. You hold your chest like it hurts. Do you want me to turn up the air conditioning? I am fine, son. I wheezed, shifting my weight to find a position that did not make my sternum feel like it was splitting open. Just a little soreness. I had surgery a few days ago. Surgery? Ali shook his head, his eyes widening. And nobody come for you. No son, no daughter. That is not right. In my country, the old men are kings. The family fights for the honor to drive them home. If my father was sick, I would sleep on the floor by his bed. I would not let him take a yellow cab. His words stung worse than the iodine on my incision. Here was a stranger, a man who probably had not seen his own father in years, giving me more respect in 5 minutes than my own son had given me in 5 years. Tyrell was probably still on the couch drinking the beer I paid for, screaming at the television while his wife complained about the air conditioning bill. It is a busy time, I lied, looking out the window to avoid Ali's gaze. Everyone is working. Ali did not say anything, but I saw him frown. He knew I was lying. We drove in silence for a few blocks until the brake lights ahead of us turned into a sea of red. Traffic was gridlocked. We were stuck on the edge of the east side, a neighborhood that had seen better days. The buildings were boarded up and graffiti covered the brick walls like scars. Young men stood on the corners watching the cars go by with hungry, desperate eyes. "Looks like we are stuck," Ali said, tapping the steering wheel. "There is a protest or an accident up ahead. We might be here a while." My throat felt like sandpaper. The hospital air had dried me out and the stress was making my mouth taste like old pennies. I looked to my right and saw a neon sign flickering in the twilight. A convenience store. It looked run down with bars on the windows and a door that looked like it had been kicked in a few times, but it was open. "I need water," I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. "I will be right back." "Sir, you should not go out there," Ali warned, turning around. "This is not a good place for a walk, especially not with that hospital bracelet on your wrist. Let me go for you." "No," I insisted, pushing the door open. "I need to move. I need to feel my legs. Just keep the meter running." I stepped out onto the cracked pavement. The humid air hit me instantly heavy and thick. I walked slowly, clutching the cane the hospital physical therapist had insisted I take. It was a sturdy metal stick, and right now it was the only thing keeping me upright. I made my way to the store entrance, ignoring the stares of 2 teenagers leaning against a brick wall. They looked at my gray hair and my slow gait and saw prey. I looked back at them with the hard eyes of a man who had worked in a garage for 40 years dealing with cheats and hustlers. They looked away first. The bell above the door jingled as I walked in. The clerk was a middle-aged Asian man standing behind a wall of plexiglass that was thick enough to stop a bullet. He looked up from his phone wary. "Just water," I muttered, making my way to the coolers in the back. I grabbed a bottle of water and a small packet of aspirin. My chest was throbbing a dull rhythm of pain that synced with my heartbeat. As I walked back to the counter, my eyes drifted to the lottery machine. The Powerball jackpot was up to $80 million. Coretta used to play every week. She had a system. Her birthday, our anniversary, and the day we bought the house. She never won more than a free ticket, but she always said it was about hope, not money. Buying a ticket felt like talking to her. "Give me a Powerball too," I said, placing the water and aspirin on the counter. The clerk punched the buttons. "Do you want to pick your numbers or let the machine do it?" "I will pick them," I said. 4, 12, 19, 85, and 7. 7 was Coretta's lucky number. The machine whirred and spat out a small slip of paper. I handed the clerk a $20 bill, my fingers trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from weakness. I was tired. So incredibly tired. Suddenly the door crashed open. The bell jingled violently. 2 men burst in. They were wearing ski masks and oversized hoodies. The taller one had a pistol in his hand. It looked like a cheap piece, maybe a Saturday night special, but a bullet is a bullet. "Open the register," the gunman screamed, waving the weapon at the clerk. "Open it now or I will blow your head off." The clerk froze his hands in the air, his face draining of color. "Please take it all." The second man jumped over the counter and started shoving cartons of cigarettes into a duffel bag. I stood near the lottery machine, gripping my cane. I was invisible to them. Just an old man in the corner. A piece of furniture. Just like I was to Tyrell. Just like I was to Paige. "Hey, old man," the gunman shouted, turning toward me. "Drop the wallet, throw it on the floor." I looked at him. I looked at the gun shaking in his hand. He was young, maybe Tyrell's age. He was scared, but he was also dangerous. I slowly reached into my pocket. My chest screamed in protest. Faster, Grandpa, he yelled, taking a step toward me. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the medication. Maybe it was the pain. Or maybe it was the realization that I had spent my whole life being careful, working hard, playing by the rules, and I had still ended up alone in a convenience store facing a gun while my son watched football. I was done being a victim. I pulled out my wallet, but I let it drop to the side, distracting him for a fraction of a second. As his eyes followed the leather splashing onto the dirty tile, I shifted my weight. I was a mechanic. I knew about leverage. I knew about torque. And I knew that a metal cane swung with the full weight of a 200-pound man could break bone. I did not think. I swung. I brought the cane down in a vicious arc, aiming not for his head, but for his wrist. The sound was sickening, a loud crack like a dry branch snapping in a storm. The gunman screamed a high-pitched wail of agony, and the pistol clattered to the floor. Before he could recover, I drove the rubber tip of the cane into his stomach. It was a move I had learned in the schoolyard 50 years ago. He doubled over, gasping for air. The second robber popped up from behind the counter, eyes wide with shock. He saw his partner on the floor, writhing and holding a broken wrist. He saw me, a 70-year-old heart patient, standing there with teeth bared, breathing like a steam engine, holding a metal cane like a warrior's sword. He did not want to find out what I would do next. He vaulted back over the counter and bolted out the door, leaving his partner and the cigarettes behind. The gunman on the floor tried to reach for his weapon with his good hand. I stepped on the gun, pressing it down with my orthopedic shoe. "Stay down, son," I growled, my voice rumbling deep in my chest. "Unless you want me to break the other one." The clerk was already on the phone, shouting for the police. I leaned heavily against the counter, my vision swimming. The adrenaline was fading and the pain was coming back like a tidal wave. My chest felt like it was on fire. I gasped for air, clutching the counter to keep from falling. "Sir, sit down, please," the clerk said, running around the plexiglass to help me. "You saved me. You saved my life." I sat on a milk crate, breathing hard. The gunman was sobbing on the floor, nursing his arm. I looked at him and I did not feel anger. I felt pity. He was just another lost boy making bad choices. Just like Tyrell. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Blue and red lights flashed against the store windows. Within minutes, the place was swarming with cops. And then the cameras arrived. Apparently, there had been a news crew nearby covering the traffic jam. When they heard the police scanner call about a robbery in progress and an elderly victim fighting back, they descended like vultures. I walked out of the store, supported by a paramedic who wanted to take me back to the hospital. "No hospital," I insisted. "I am going home." A young woman with a microphone and perfect hair shoved her way to the front. "Sir, can you tell us what happened inside? We heard you fought off an armed robber with a cane. Is that true?" I looked at the camera. I saw the red light blinking. I knew this would be on the evening news. "I just wanted to buy some water," I said, my voice raspy and tired. "A man has a right to buy water without getting a gun shoved in his face." "You are a hero, sir," the reporter said. "You just had heart surgery, is that correct?" "Yeah," I said, 4 days ago. And you still took him down. That is incredible. What gave you the strength?" I touched the pocket of my shirt. The lottery ticket was there, crinkled and warm against my chest, right next to the long, angry scar that ran down my sternum. "I just wanted to go home," I said. "I have a son waiting for me." The lie tasted bitter. My son was not waiting. He was tolerating my existence. "Can we get your name, sir?" the reporter asked. "Langston Bennett," I said. The paramedics checked my vitals. My blood pressure was high, but my heart was holding steady. It was a tough old heart. It had survived grief, poverty, and betrayal. A robber was nothing compared to that. I saw Ali, the taxi driver, standing by his cab, waving his arms at the police to let him through. He had waited. He had not driven off. "That is my ride," I said, pushing past the reporter. "Mr. Bennett." "One more question," she shouted. I ignored her. I climbed back into the taxi, moving slowly, feeling every bruise and every stitch. Ali looked at me with wide eyes. "You are a crazy man, Baba," he said, shaking his head but smiling. "You fight the bad guys. You are like action movie star. Just drive, Ali," I said, closing my eyes. "Just take me home." As the taxi pulled away from the chaos, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the slip of paper, the lottery ticket. I smoothed it out on my knee. 4, 12, 19, 85. 7. I did not know if the numbers were winners. I did not care. I just folded the ticket carefully, making sure the corners were sharp, and slid it into my breast pocket directly over my heart. It sat there, a thin piece of paper separating my skin from the world. I did not know it then, but that piece of paper was a bomb waiting to go off. And when it did, it would blow the roof off the house on Martin Luther King Boulevard and expose every lie that had been rotting in the foundation. I leaned my head back against the seat and watched the city lights blur. I was going home, but it was not a sanctuary anymore. It was enemy territory, and I was walking in wounded but armed with something far more dangerous than a cane. I had the truth. And by tonight, everyone in this city, including my ungrateful son and his venomous wife, would know exactly who Langston Bennett was. The taxi taillights faded into the darkness, leaving me standing on the cracked concrete of my own driveway. The house stood before me, a 2-story brick colonial that I had spent 30 years paying off. I knew every shingle on that roof. I knew every squeak in the floorboards. Coretta and I had planted the oak tree in the front yard when Tyrell was just a baby trying to walk. Now the tree was massive, casting a long shadow over the lawn that desperately needed mowing. I limped toward the front door, clutching my plastic bag of hospital belongings. The wind had picked up, cutting through my thin jacket and settling deep in my bones. My chest throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache that synced with my heartbeat. Every step was a negotiation with pain. I just wanted my bed. I wanted my pillows. I wanted to smell the faint scent of lavender that still lingered in the master bedroom sheets even years after Coretta had passed. I reached for my keys, my fingers trembling slightly from exhaustion. I found the brass key, the one I had used every day for 2 decades. I slid it into the lock. It did not turn. I frowned, thinking maybe I had grabbed the wrong one. I tried again, jiggling it, pushing it, pulling it back slightly. The key would not budge. The cylinder felt different. Stiff. New. I stepped back and looked at the hardware. It was a shiny smart lock with a keypad and a camera. They had changed the locks. My son and his wife had changed the locks on my house while I was lying in a hospital bed with my chest cut open. A wave of dizziness hit me. I had to lean against the door frame to keep from sliding down the brickwork. It was not just the physical weakness. It was the sheer audacity of it, the disrespect. I raised my hand and knocked. The sound was hollow against the heavy wood. Silence. I knocked again, harder this time, ignoring the sharp pain that shot through my shoulder. Tyrell, Paige, open the door. It is me. I waited. I could see the blue flicker of the television through the living room curtains. I knew they were in there. They could hear me. They were choosing not to answer. 5 minutes passed. The wind was biting now, stinging my face. I was shivering, and shivering was dangerous for my stitches. I felt like a beggar on my own porch, a stranger asking for alms at the castle gate. I pounded on the door with the handle of my cane. The metal rang out loud and angry. "Open this door, Tyrell." Finally, the porch light flicked on, blinding me for a second. I heard the electronic whir of the new lock disengaging. The door swung open, but only halfway. Paige stood there, blocking the entrance. She was wearing a silk robe that I recognized from a luxury catalog that had arrived in the mail last week addressed to her. In her hand, she held a glass of white wine. The condensation on the glass told me it was chilled perfectly, unlike me shivering on the doorstep. She looked me up and down, her expression hovering somewhere between annoyance and mild disgust. She did not step back to let me in. She did not ask if I was okay. She just took a sip of her wine and sighed. "You are making a lot of noise, Langston," she said. "The neighbors are going to complain." I tried to step forward, but she didn't move. "You changed the locks," I said, my voice raspy. "We had to," she replied breezily. "Security concerns. You know how it is in this neighborhood. We meant to give you the code later. We did not think you would actually be coming back so soon." She said coming back as if I were a guest who had overstayed his welcome, not the owner of the property. "Let me in, Paige," I said, gripping my cane until my knuckles turned white. "I need to sit down." She hesitated for a fraction of a second, as if weighing whether it was worth the effort to keep me out. Then she stepped aside, rolling her eyes. "Fine, but please try to be quiet. Tyrell is watching the game, and he has had a long day. A long day. My son had a long day sitting on my couch while I was fighting off armed robbers and recovering from heart surgery." The irony tasted like bile in my throat. I stepped across the threshold, and the sensory assault was immediate. The house did not smell like my home anymore. For 40 years, this house had smelled of lemon oil, pine wood, and the spices Coretta used to cook with. paprika, garlic, thyme. It was a warm, earthy smell. Now the air was thick with a cloying, artificial scent, vanilla and heavy musk. I looked around. There were candles everywhere, expensive designer candles burning on the mantel, on the side tables, on the dining console. They were suffocating. It smelled like a funeral parlor or a cheap boutique. I walked into the living room. The furniture had been rearranged. My favorite recliner, the leather one molded perfectly to my back, was gone. In its place was a trendy beige accent chair that looked like it would collapse if a grown man sat on it. Tyrell was sprawled on the main sofa, his feet propped up on the coffee table. He was wearing a jersey that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. He did not look up when I entered. His eyes were glued to the 85-inch screen where millionaires were chasing a ball. "Hey, Dad," he grunted, taking a bite of a slice of pizza. "You made it." I stood there leaning on my cane, waiting for him to get up, waiting for him to offer me a seat, waiting for him to ask how the surgery went, waiting for him to act like a man. He did not move. "Where is my chair?" I asked. Paige walked past me, trailing the scent of expensive perfume. "Oh, that old thing. We put it out on the curb for bulk pickup." It was hideous, Langston. The leather was cracked and it ruined the aesthetic of the room. "We are trying to modernize the space. Give it some feng shui." "You threw away my chair," I repeated. "It smelled like oil," an old man, Paige said, taking another sip of wine. "Besides, you are hardly ever down here. You just sit in it and sleep." It was depressing. I looked at Tyrell. He finally glanced away from the TV for a second, but he could not meet my eyes. He stared at a spot on the wall just past my shoulder. "Paige has a good eye for design, Dad," he mumbled. "The house looks better. More value." I was too tired to argue about furniture. I was too tired to scream. My body was shutting down. I needed to lie down before I collapsed right there on their modern beige rug. "I am going to my room," I said, turning toward the stairs. "I need to rest." Paige cleared her throat, a sharp, abrasive sound. "About that," she said, stepping in front of the staircase. I stopped. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. There was a gleam in her eyes, a predatory satisfaction that she was barely trying to hide. "What now?" I asked. "We made some changes while you were in the hospital," she said, examining her manicured fingernails. "Since you were gone and we didn't know when or if you were coming back, we decided to repurpose the master bedroom." "Repurpose," I whispered. "That was my room. That was the room where I had held Coretta while she took her last breath. That was the room where we had conceived Tyrell. It was my sanctuary. It has the best light," Paige explained. "And since I am launching my yoga and wellness channel, I needed a studio. We moved the bed out. We painted the walls a soothing sage green. We put in full-length mirrors. It is really beautiful, Langston. You should be happy. It is being used for something productive now." I looked at Tyrell again. He shrank into the sofa, turning up the volume on the game, as if the crowd noise could drown out his shame. "You kicked me out of my own bedroom," I said, my voice rising despite the pain. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" Paige pointed a manicured finger toward the kitchen door, toward the door that led down to the finished basement. "The downstairs suite is open," she said. "It is private. It is quiet. And honestly, it is better for everyone. You won't have to worry about the stairs with your heart condition. And we won't have to hear you coughing all night. It is a win-win." The basement. It was a finished basement, yes, but it was damp. It had small windows near the ceiling that barely let in any light. It was cold in the winter and humid in the summer. It was where we stored the Christmas decorations and the old winter coats. It was not a room for the master of the house. It was a room for a servant or a dog. "You put my things in the basement?" I asked, feeling the heat rise in my face. "We moved your clothes and your nightstand," Paige said. "The bed wouldn't fit down the narrow stairs, so we put the air mattress down there for now. It is very comfortable, high quality. An air mattress." I looked at them. My son, the coward. My daughter-in-law, the usurper. Standing in my house, drinking my wine, watching my TV, telling me to go sleep on a balloon in the cellar. I gripped my cane. I wanted to use it. I wanted to smash the expensive candles. I wanted to shatter the TV screen. I wanted to tear down the sage green walls. But then I felt the crinkle of paper in my shirt pocket. The lottery ticket. $80 million. If I exploded now, if I kicked them out tonight, they would fight me. They would claim squatter rights. They would drag me through court. And in my condition, the stress might kill me before I ever saw a dime. No, I needed to be smarter. I needed to be cold. I took a deep breath. The pain in my chest flared hot and sharp, but I forced a smile, a tight, painful grimace. "You are right," I said. "The stairs are hard. The basement is better." Paige looked surprised. She had expected a fight. She had her claws out ready to scratch, but now she had nothing to strike. She looked disappointed. "Good," she said, sniffing. "I am glad you are being reasonable for once. Dinner is leftovers in the fridge if you are hungry. We already ate." I walked past them. I walked through the kitchen, which was filled with dirty dishes they hadn't bothered to wash. I opened the basement door. A draft of musty, cool air hit me. It smelled of mildew and neglect. I navigated the steep wooden steps one by one, clutching the railing. My legs were shaking so badly I almost fell twice. When I reached the bottom, I pulled the string for the single overhead bulb. The room was bleak. My clothes were piled in garbage bags in the corner. My nightstand was there, scratched from being dragged down the stairs. And in the center of the concrete floor was a deflated air mattress with a single thin blanket thrown over it. This was my homecoming. I sat on the edge of the mattress, which sank nearly to the floor under my weight. I was 70 years old. I had worked since I was 12, and this was what I had to show for it. I did not eat. I took my pain medication with a sip of warm water from the bathroom tap down the hall. I lay down on the plastic mattress, staring up at the unfinished ceiling. I could hear their footsteps upstairs. I could hear the muffled thumping of the television base. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. The pain was too intense and my mind was racing. Hours passed. The house grew quiet. The television turned off. I heard them walking above me, heading toward my old bedroom. The floorboards creaked. I knew exactly where they were stepping. I lay in the darkness, listening. The ventilation system in this house was old. The ducts carried sound like a telephone wire, especially from the master bedroom down to the basement utility room, which was just behind a thin drywall partition near my head. I heard voices, clear as day. "I cannot believe he actually went down there," Paige's voice drifted through the vent. "I thought he was going to have a stroke right there in the living room." "He is weak," Tyrell said. "He looks bad, Paige. Gray. Like death warmed over." "Good," Paige replied. "The sooner he goes, the better. Did you call the lawyer?" "Yeah," Tyrell said. "I left a message." "We need to move fast, Tyrell. We cannot have him lingering down there for years. It is creepy, and I do not want to change his diapers when he gets worse. He is just recovering from surgery, Paige. He is not invalid." Yet she snapped. "But he is old, and his heart is a ticking time bomb." "Listen, I was looking at the assisted living facilities today." "You mean the nursing homes? Whatever. There is one on the state line. It is state-funded. It is cheap. It smells like bleach and boiled cabbage, but they will take him with his Medicaid. We just need to prove he cannot take care of himself." "How do we do that?" "We document it. He is confused. He is aggressive. He falls. If we report that he is a danger to himself, the state will step in. We can get power of attorney, Tyrell, and once we have that, we can sell this dump." "This is not a dump," Tyrell said defensively. "It is dated. It is old. But the land is worth a fortune. We sell the house, put him in the facility, and use the equity to buy that condo downtown, the one with the pool, the one I actually deserve." I lay frozen in the dark. My breath hitched in my throat. They were not just being cruel. They were plotting. They were planning to erase me, to lock me away in a warehouse for the dying so they could cash out my life's work for a condo with a pool. I reached up and touched the pocket of my shirt where the ticket lay. State-funded facility. Boiled cabbage. I closed my eyes and a single tear leaked out, sliding into my ear. "Okay," Tyrell said. "Okay. We will do it next week. Let him heal a little first so it does not look suspicious." "Next week," Paige agreed. "Good night, babe." Silence fell over the house, the heavy silence of a tomb. But in the darkness of the basement, my eyes snapped open. The sadness evaporated. The grief for the son I thought I had burned away, leaving nothing but cold, hard ash. Next week. They thought they had a week. They thought they had time. They thought they were the predators and I was the prey. I sat up on the deflated mattress. My chest hurt, but I didn't care. I reached for my bag and pulled out the photo of Coretta. I kissed her smiling face. "I am sorry, honey," I whispered. "I tried. I really tried with him. But you cannot save something that is already rotten." I put the photo back. Then I pulled out the ticket. $80 million. They wanted to sell the house for $500,000. They wanted to throw me away for pennies. I realized then that I wasn't just going to leave. I wasn't just going to take my money and disappear. That would be too easy. That would be too kind. No, I was going to give them exactly what they wanted. I was going to give them the world. I was going to lift them up so high they could touch the clouds. And then when they were standing at the very top thinking they had won everything, I was going to pull the floor out from under them. I checked my watch. It was 3 a.m. I had work to do. I needed a lawyer, a specific lawyer, an old friend from the neighborhood named Steinberg, a man who was as crooked as a dog's hind leg when he needed to be, but loyal to the bone to his friends. I pulled out my phone and sent a text. Steinberg, I need you. Big job. Life or death. Meet me at the diner on 4th at 6 a.m. I lay back down, but I did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling, visualizing the layout of the house, visualizing the deed, visualizing the look on Paige's face when the hammer finally fell. Let them have the master bedroom tonight. Let them dream of their condo and their pool, because tomorrow the old man in the basement was going to start a fire. And by the time he was done, the only thing left of their dreams would be smoke. The smell of garlic butter and seared beef drifted down through the floorboards, and it felt like a physical slap to my face. I sat on the edge of the deflated air mattress in the damp basement, clutching a slice of stale white bread I had found in the back of the pantry. My dinner was this dry bread and a glass of lukewarm water from the bathroom tap. My stomach growled a low rumble of hunger that echoed in the empty room. Upstairs, the sounds of a feast were in full swing. I heard the distinct clink of heavy silverware against china. They were using Coretta's good plates, the ones with the gold rim that she only brought out for Thanksgiving and Christmas. They were cutting into steaks using my wife's treasured porcelain for a Tuesday night dinner, while I rotted in the cellar like a discarded piece of trash. I took a bite of the bread. It stuck to the roof of my mouth, dry and tasteless. I swallowed it with difficulty, feeling it slide past the lump of anger in my throat. I was not just hungry for food, I was starving for respect. But that night the menu only offered humiliation. I heard Tyrell laugh. It was a full belly laugh, the kind he used to share with me when we worked on cars together. Now he was laughing at something Paige said. Her voice was shrill and excited, piercing through the floor. They were celebrating their future. They were toasting to the master bedroom they had stolen and the condo they planned to buy. They were celebrating a life without me. The dampness of the basement seeped into my bones, making my surgical scars ache with a sharp, biting pain. I finished the bread and drank the water, staring at the gray concrete wall. I was the man who had built the foundation of this house, and now I was imprisoned beneath it. Suddenly, the volume on the 85-inch television upstairs increased. The floorboards vibrated with the sound. I heard the familiar jingle of the 6 o'clock news. I shifted on the mattress, trying to get comfortable, but my ears were strained toward the ceiling. Then the anchor's voice boomed through the thin floor. Tonight, a local hero. A 70-year-old man recovering from open-heart surgery fights off armed robbers at a convenience store on the east side. I stiffened. My heart began to pound against my ribs. Upstairs, the clinking of silverware stopped. Silence fell over the dining room. Then Tyrell shouted, "Babe, look, it is Dad." I waited. For a split second, a foolish part of me waited for the pride. I waited for my son to say, "That is my father. That is the man who raised me." Instead, Paige cackled. It was a cruel, high-pitched sound. "Look at him. He looks like a homeless person waving a stick around. God, Tyrell, he is embarrassing us on national television. Look at his hair. He looks deranged." Tyrell laughed too, joining in the mockery. "He really does look crazy. I hope nobody recognizes the last name. Can you imagine the guys at the gym seeing this? My dad, the vigilante grandpa. They were mocking the man who had saved a life. They were laughing at my survival. My heart hardened into stone. The last ember of affection I held for them was extinguished right there in the dark. I did not care anymore. I just wanted them to stop talking. Then the news anchor shifted gears, and in a twist of fate, that very same convenience store on Martin Luther King Boulevard is the location where the single winning Powerball ticket was sold this afternoon. The jackpot stands at $80 million. My hand flew to my chest pocket. The ticket was warm against my skin, right next to my scar. I pulled it out. The darkness of the basement was thick, but a sliver of light from the street lamp outside cut through the high, narrow window. It was just enough. I squinted at the paper, my hands trembling not from age, but from the sheer magnitude of the moment. 4, 12, 19, 85, 7. My breath caught in my throat. The air left the room. I looked again. The numbers were there. Black ink on white paper. I had the ticket. I had the $80 million. Upstairs, the anchor continued. Check your pockets, folks. If you bought a ticket at Al's Market today between 2 and 3 p.m., you might be richer than God. The silence upstairs was sudden and absolute. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a bomb falling right before the explosion. Then a chair scraped violently against the hardwood floor. Tyrell Page shrieked. Her voice was not mocking anymore. It was hysterical, edged with a frantic greed. Your dad was there. He was there at 2:30. The news said he was buying water and aspirin. Tyrell's heavy footsteps pounded across the floor, pacing back and forth. No way. Dad never plays the lottery. Mom did. Not him. He thinks it is a tax on the poor. He is old, Tyrell Page yelled. Old people do exactly what their dead wives did. He misses her. What if he played her numbers? What if he bought a ticket? I sat in the dark, clutching $80 million, listening to my son and his wife hyperventilate over money they thought belonged to them. I heard them running around the room. I heard them opening drawers. They were looking for something. They were looking for proof. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The air in the basement suddenly felt very thin. I knew my son. I knew his weakness. And I knew Paige. I knew her ambition. If they came down here and found this ticket, I would never leave this house alive. They would not wait for the nursing home. They would not wait for the state to declare me incompetent. $80 million was enough motive to turn a bad son into a murderer. They would find a pillow. They would find an accident. They would say my heart just gave out. I had to move. The pain in my chest was forgotten. Adrenaline flooded my veins, cold and sharp. I folded the ticket carefully, making it as small as possible, and put it inside my sock deep against my ankle bone. I grabbed my small plastic hospital bag. I put the photo of Coretta inside. I found the original deed to the house, which I had hidden in an old rusted toolbox they never touched because it was too dirty for their delicate hands. I shoved that in too. Above me, the argument was escalating. Go ask him, Paige screamed. Go down there and check his pockets. I am not going down there, Tyrell yelled back. You go. He is weird right now. He might hit me with that cane. We need to know. Tyrell Page hissed. $80 million. Do you know what we could do with that? We could buy the whole building, not just the condo. Go down there. While they screamed about who would come down to interrogate me, I moved toward the back door of the basement. It was a bulkhead door leading out to the backyard. It was heavy steel rusted shut from years of disuse. I gritted my teeth. I pushed. My chest screamed in protest, the stitches pulling tight against my skin. I pushed harder, ignoring the agony. The rusty hinges groaned a low metallic screech, but the sound was masked by Paige throwing a wine glass against the wall upstairs. The door gave way. I slipped out into the cool night air. The grass was wet against my ankles. I did not look back at the house. I did not look at the warm glow of the kitchen window where my family was plotting to strip search me. I hobbled through the backyard, past the overgrown garden Coretta used to tend toward the dark alleyway. I was leaving my home. I was leaving the life I had built for 40 years, but I was taking my dignity and $80 million with me. I reached the street and kept walking one painful step at a time, staying in the shadows until the house was just a dark shape behind me. I was a ghost now, a rich, vengeful ghost, and they would not see me again until I was ready to bring their world crashing down. The marble lobby of the Grand Ellington Hotel was so polished I could see the reflection of my worn sneakers on the floor. I walked up to the front desk, clutching my plastic hospital bag like a drifter who had wandered in from the cold. The concierge, a young man with a stiff collar and a stiffer upper lip, looked me up and down. His eyes lingered on my wrinkled clothes and the cane in my hand. I could see the dismissal forming on his lips, the polite request for me to leave the premises. Before he could speak, I pulled out my wallet and slapped my black credit card on the counter. It was the one card I had kept secret from Tyrell, a remnant of the days when I ran my own shop and had impeccable credit. I want the presidential suite, I said, my voice rough but commanding, for a week. And I want a bottle of your finest bourbon sent up, not for drinking, just for looking at. The clerk's demeanor changed instantly. The plastic smile snapped into place. Of course, Mr. Bennett. Right away, sir. 10 minutes later, I was standing in a room bigger than the entire ground floor of my house. There were floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The bed was a cloud of white linen. The bathroom had a tub deep enough to swim in. I sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in 4 days, I breathed. The air here didn't smell of mildew or cheap vanilla candles. It smelled of lavender and money. I took a long, hot shower, letting the water scald the memory of that damp basement off my skin. I scrubbed away the grime of the alleyway. When I stepped out, I wrapped myself in a robe that felt like a hug from an old friend. I sat in a velvet armchair by the window and finally turned my phone back on. It vibrated so hard against the glass table it sounded like a drill. The screen lit up with a chaotic stream of notifications, 99 missed calls, 57 text messages. The sheer volume of their panic was satisfying. I opened the messages. Tyrell. Dad, where are you? We are so worried. Please pick up. Tyrell. We saw the news. Is it true? Do you have the ticket? Paige. Dad, please come home. The basement was just temporary until we fixed up the guest room. We love you. Paige. We are family Langston. Do not let strangers turn you against us. Call us back immediately. I scrolled through the lies. Just hours ago, I was a nuisance, a coughing old man to be hidden away. Now, I was dad. I was beloved. I was family. The hypocrisy was nauseating. They were not worried about my heart. They were worried about the $80 million walking around the city without their supervision. They were terrified I would die before they could get my signature on a check. I did not reply. Let them sweat. Let them stare at the empty basement and wonder if their golden goose had flown the coop for good. I ordered a steak from room service, a ribeye medium rare with asparagus. I ate it slowly, savoring every bite using heavy silver cutlery that felt substantial in my hand. I was not a prisoner in a cellar. I was Langston Bennett, and I was about to go to war. The next morning, I met Steinberg at a diner 3 blocks from the hotel. Steinberg was 75 years old, a Jewish lawyer who had been practicing since before civil rights were fully codified. He wore a suit that was 20 years out of style and had a mustard stain on his tie, but his eyes were sharp as razors. We had known each other for 30 years. He had helped me with the deed to my house, and I had fixed his Cadillac more times than I could count. He slid into the booth opposite me and signaled the waitress for coffee without saying a word. You look like hell, Langston, he grunted. I heard you had heart surgery, and now you are running around town fighting robbers and winning lotteries. Are you trying to kill yourself? I pulled the folded lottery ticket from my sock and slid it across the table under a napkin. Check the numbers, Steinberg. Tell me I am not dreaming. Steinberg peeked under the napkin. He adjusted his thick glasses. He looked at the ticket, then pulled out his phone to check the winning numbers. He went still. He looked up at me and let out a long, low whistle. 80 million, he whispered. Mazel tov, my friend. You effectively own the city. Why do you look like you are attending a funeral? Because my son wants to kill me for it, I said. I told him everything. The text messages at the hospital, the changed locks, the basement, the conversation I overheard about the nursing home, the plan to declare me incompetent. Steinberg listened, his face hardening into a mask of cold fury. He hated bullies, and he hated ungrateful children even more. If you cash this ticket today, Langston, you lose, Steinberg said, tapping the table with a knobby finger. What do you mean? It is my ticket. It is your ticket, but you are a man recovering from major surgery who was just involved in a violent altercation. If you claim this money, Tyrell and his wife will file an emergency petition for guardianship. They will say the anesthesia scrambled your brains. They will say the trauma made you unstable. They will find a crooked doctor to testify that you cannot manage your own affairs. A judge might freeze the assets while they investigate, and during that investigation you could have a tragic accident on the stairs. Do you understand me? I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. They would use the legal system to put a leash on me. So what do? I asked. We set a trap. Steinberg said, a wicked grin spreading across his face. We make them believe you are exactly what they say you are. Confused, senile, weak. We make them think the ticket is lost or that you are too out of it to cash it. Why? Because greedy people make mistakes when they think they have won, Steinberg explained. We need to insulate your assets before the money hits your account. We need to get them to sign a document voluntarily disinheriting themselves. How in the world will I get them to do that? We create a trust, Steinberg said, the Bennett Family Trust. I will draft the papers. We tell them that in order to avoid the 40% inheritance tax, which is a lie, but they are too stupid to know that we need to consolidate all family assets into the trust before the lottery winnings are deposited. We tell them that the trust requires the current deed to the house and any other assets to be signed over to you, the grantor, to trigger the tax loophole. They will sign over the house to get the 80 million I realized. They would sign over their own souls for 80 million. Steinberg chuckled. They will think it is just a formality. A paper shuffle. Once they sign the quitclaim deed on the house and sign the waiver of beneficiary rights to the trust, they are legally entitled to nothing. The trust will be revocable only by you. And the moment the money clears, we evict them. It was brutal. It was ruthless. It was perfect. Draw it up, I said. One more thing, Steinberg warned. You have to sell the performance, Langston. You have to go back there and be the doddering old fool they want you to be. You have to let them abuse you for a few more days. Can you do that? Can you swallow your pride? I thought about the basement. I thought about the air mattress. I can do it, I said. Good. Go to the bank. Put the ticket in a safety deposit box. Do not walk around with $80 million in your sock. Make a photocopy. A bad one. Something blurry. Use that as your prop. And Langston, be careful. These people are not your family anymore. They are sharks, and you are swimming in their tank. I left the diner and went straight to the First National Bank. I rented a box. I placed the ticket inside the metal drawer. It looked just like a piece of paper, but it felt heavy like a brick of gold. I locked it away. Then I went to the business center in the hotel. I made a photocopy of the ticket, then I crumpled it up, smoothed it out, and rubbed a little coffee stain on the corner. It looked old. It looked neglected. I went back up to my room and stood in front of the full-length mirror. I looked at the man staring back at me. He looked strong. Too strong. I slumped my shoulders. I let my jaw go slack. I widened my eyes to give them a vacant, watery look. I practiced a tremor in my right hand. "Where is my ticket?" I mumbled to the mirror, my voice pitching up into a confused whine. "I had it right here. Did I lose it?" I practiced until I believed it myself. I practiced until the strong, capable mechanic was gone, and in his place stood a fragile, confused old man who needed help tying his shoes. I was ready. I packed my bag. I checked out of the hotel. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the expensive air one last time. I was going back to the house on Martin Luther King Boulevard. I was going back to the basement, but this time I wasn't the victim. I was the actor in the final act of a tragedy, and Tyrell and Paige didn't even know they had already been cast as the fools. I walked out to the taxi stand and gave the driver the address. "It is showtime," I whispered to myself. The taxi rolled up to the curb of the house on Martin Luther King Boulevard, and before the wheels even stopped moving, I saw the front door fly open. Tyrell sprinted down the driveway like he was trying to catch a touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. He was wearing a fresh polo shirt and chinos, looking like the picture of a dutiful son. Paige was right behind him, standing on the porch with a smile so wide and bright it looked like it had been painted on by a clown. I sat in the back seat and took a deep breath. I let my shoulders slump forward. I relaxed my jaw until my mouth hung slightly open. I let my hands tremble. The strong man who had faced down a robber was gone. In his place sat a confused, fragile old man who had just wandered home. Ali, the taxi driver, looked at me in the rearview mirror, confused by my sudden transformation. I gave him a quick wink before Tyrell yanked the door open. "Dad," Tyrell shouted, his voice cracking with a performance of relief that deserved an Oscar. "Oh, thank God. We were so worried. Where did you go? Why did you not answer your phone?" I blinked at him, slowly dazed. "Tyrell." I rasped, my voice weak. "Is that you, son? I got lost. The city is so big." Tyrell reached in and unbuckled my seatbelt. His hands were gentle, almost reverent. This was the same man who told me to call an Uber yesterday because the game was tied. Now he was treating me like I was made of spun glass. "I got you, Dad. I got you. Let me help you up." He practically lifted me out of the car. I put all my weight on him, letting him groan under the strain. I wanted him to feel the burden of the father he had tried to throw away. Paige came running down the steps. She wasn't holding a glass of wine today. She was wringing her hands together, her eyes scanning me up and down, looking for one thing and one thing only. "The ticket." "Langston," she cooed. "You poor thing, you must be exhausted. Come inside." We made breakfast. We made a feast. They guided me into the house. The smell hit me immediately. It wasn't the cloying vanilla scent from yesterday. It was bacon. Hickory smoked bacon, eggs frying in butter, warm biscuits, and fresh coffee. It smelled like Saturday mornings used to smell when Coretta was alive. They had gone all out. They sat me down at the head of the dining table. The good china was out again, but this time it was set for me. There was a mountain of food, scrambled eggs, sausages, grits swimming in butter, and a stack of pancakes. I looked at the food and then at them. They were hovering over me, watching me with hungry, desperate eyes. "Eat, Dad," Tyrell urged, pushing a glass of orange juice toward my hand. "You need your strength. The medicine makes you weak." I reached for the glass, letting my hand shake violently. Juice sloshed over the rim and spilled onto the pristine tablecloth. "Oops," I muttered. "I am sorry. My hands. They do not work right." "No problem," Paige chirped, grabbing a napkin and dabbing at the spill. "Do not worry about it, Langston. We will clean it up. Just eat." Then she did something that almost made me break character. She looked at my sneakers. They were old, worn, scuffed from the alleyway. "Oh, Tyrell, look at his feet," she said. "He is still wearing those dirty shoes. He must be so uncomfortable." Tyrell dropped to his knees instantly. He did not hesitate. He knelt on the hardwood floor at my feet and began to untie my shoelaces. "Let me get these off you, Dad," he said. "You need to relax." I looked down at the top of my son's head. I remembered changing his diapers. I remembered tying his cleats before his first Pee-wee game. And now here he was, kneeling not out of love but out of a greed so profound it had erased his dignity. He pulled my shoes off gently, peeling away the socks. I held my breath. The photocopy of the ticket was in my pocket, not my sock. But the feeling of his hands on my feet was a stark reminder of the power dynamic shift. Yesterday I was dirt. Today I was the golden calf. I ate slowly, chewing every bite with agonizing slowness while they watched. I could feel the tension radiating off them. They were vibrating with the need to ask the question, the $80 million question. Finally, Paige could not take it anymore. She sat down next to me and poured herself a coffee, her hand trembling slightly. "So, Langston," she started, her voice high and tight. "We saw the news last night. About the robbery." I stopped chewing. I stared at a piece of bacon. "Robbery," I mumbled. "Yes. Bad men. Loud noises." "You were so brave," Tyrell added, still sitting on the floor by my feet. "A hero." "Dad. Everyone is talking about it." I nodded slowly. "I just wanted water." Paige leaned in closer. Her perfume was overpowering. "The news report said something else, Langston. They said the winning Powerball ticket was sold at that store, at the exact time you were there." The room went deadly silent. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I could hear Tyrell's breathing hitch. "Ticket," I repeated, testing the word like it was foreign. "Yes, Dad," Tyrell said, getting up to his knees. "The lottery. Did you buy a ticket? Mom's numbers, remember?" I frowned. I scrunched up my face, looking like I was trying to solve a complex math problem in my head. "Coretta," I whispered. "Yes, I missed her. I wanted to play her numbers." Paige let out a small gasp. "So you did play? You bought a ticket?" I nodded. "I think so." "Yes." The machine made a noise. "Where is it?" Langston Paige asked, her eyes wide and manic. "Where is the ticket?" I patted my chest pocket, then my pants pockets. I looked around the table. I started to check the floor. "It was here," I said, my voice rising in panic. "It was a little piece of white paper. I had it." "Did you put it in your wallet?" Tyrell asked, grabbing my jacket from the back of the chair and rifling through it. No, I said, waving my hand dismissively. I took it out. I looked at it. But then what? Paige pressed, gripping the edge of the table. "My head hurts," I complained, rubbing my temples. "The doctor said the anesthesia causes memory loss." I was confused. The men with the guns came in. I was scared. "What did you do with the paper, Dad?" Tyrell asked, his voice tight with suppressed screaming. I think I threw it away," I said. The color drained from Paige's face so fast I thought she was going to faint. Tyrell looked like he had been punched in the gut. "You threw it away," Paige whispered. "I crumpled it up," I said, looking at my hands. I thought it was a receipt, or maybe a wrapper. I threw it in the trash can outside the hotel, or maybe the taxi. I do not remember. Why? Was it important? Tyrell made a sound like a wounded animal. He put his head in his hands. Paige stood up so fast her chair tipped over backward. Which hotel, she demanded. Which taxi? What company was it? I do not know, I wailed, letting my voice crack. Why are you yelling at me? I just want to finish my eggs. I am not yelling, Paige hissed, forcing a smile that looked like a rictus of pain. I am just asking. Think, Langston. Think hard. Did you put it in your pocket? Maybe the other pocket. I checked again. I pulled out the lint. I pulled out a used tissue. I pulled out the crumpled photocopy I had made at the hotel, the one with the coffee stain and the blurry numbers. Oh, here is a paper, I said, holding it up. But this is just trash. See, it is all wrinkled. I moved to toss it onto the table, but Tyrell lunged for it. He snatched it out of my hand like a starving dog grabbing a bone. He smoothed it out on the tablecloth. Paige hovered over his shoulder. I watched their eyes scan the blurry ink. 4, 12, 19, 85, 7. Oh my God, Paige breathed. Oh my God, Tyrell, this is it. This is the ticket. Tyrell looked at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. It looks weird, he said. It looks like a copy. Or old. I spilled coffee on it, I said, innocently. At the hotel. Is that the ticket? Did I win $10? $10? Paige laughed, a hysterical, bubbling sound. You won $80 million, Langston. $80 million. I dropped my fork. My jaw fell open. $80 million, I repeated. That is a lot of money. We can fix the roof. We can buy 1,000 roofs, Tyrell shouted, grabbing my face and kissing my forehead. Dad, you are a genius. You are a millionaire. We are millionaires. We, I thought. There it was. Wait, Paige said, snatching the photocopy from Tyrell. This is barely legible, and it is crumpled. We have to be careful. If the barcode is damaged, they might not accept it. Where is the original Langston? Is this the only one? I think so, I said, rubbing my eyes. My head hurts so bad. I need to lie down. No, you cannot lie down, Paige said. We need to find the original. Is this the original or a copy? It feels like regular paper. I closed my eyes and swayed in the chair. I feel dizzy, I moaned. My heart. Tyrell looked at Paige. Let him rest, babe. We have the numbers. Even if this is a copy, he must have the original somewhere. Maybe in his bag. Maybe in the other pants. Paige looked at the paper, then at me. She was calculating. She was weighing the risk of pushing me too hard versus the risk of losing the money. Okay, she said. Okay. Dad, you rest. We will take care of you. We will find everything. Tyrell helped him to the living room, not the basement. I let Tyrell help me to the sofa, the comfortable one, the one he had been hogging for years. I sat down and groaned, lifting my legs. My feet, I complained. They are swelling up again. The doctor said, I need circulation. Tyrell stood there, hovering, unsure of what to do. Rub them, I said, pointing to my swollen ankles. What Tyrell asked. My feet, I said. Rub them. The doctor said, massage helps the heart, unless you want me to have another attack right here. Tyrell looked at Paige. Paige nodded sharply, mouthing the words, 80 million. Tyrell sighed. He sat on the coffee table. He took my foot, the one with the dry skin and the thick yellow nails, and he placed it in his lap. He started to rub. Harder, I commanded. It hurts deep in the bone. My son, who thought he was too good to work, who thought manual labor was beneath him, began to massage my feet with the intensity of a man trying to scrub away his sins. I leaned back and closed my eyes, hiding the gleam of triumph. Paige, I called out. Yes, Langston, she answered from the kitchen, where she was frantically searching my hospital bag. I am hungry again, I said. But not for eggs. I want soup. We have canned soup, she said. No, I said. I want Coretta S soup, the Southern-style chicken stew, the one with the homemade dumplings. It takes about 4 hours to make. You have to chop the celery very fine, and you have to debone the chicken by hand. Paige froze. I knew she hated cooking. I knew she hated touching raw meat. She bought pre-cut vegetables and ordered takeout. Langston, that takes all day, she said, her voice tight. It comforts me, I said, letting my voice tremble. It makes me feel safe. When I feel safe, I remember things better. Maybe I will remember where I put the other papers. The bait was taken. "I will start it right now," she said, slamming a cabinet door. I sat there on the soft sofa getting a foot massage from my son while my daughter-in-law chopped onions in the kitchen, cursing under her breath. I watched the dust motes dancing in the sunlight streaming through the window. I remembered the basement. I remembered the air mattress. "A little to the left, Tyrell," I said, closing my eyes, and used two hands. "Do not be lazy." They wanted the money. They wanted the power. Well, they were going to work for it. They were going to serve the man they tried to bury. And when they were exhausted, when they had given me everything they had, I was going to show them exactly what their service was worth. Nothing. The chicken soup was salty and the dumplings were undercooked, but I ate every bite while Paige watched me with the intensity of a hawk circling a field mouse. I wiped my mouth with the linen napkin and let out a long, weary sigh. My gaze drifted toward the wall of bookshelves in the den. It was Coretta's library. She had spent 40 years collecting first editions, paperback mysteries, and history books. It was her sanctuary, and since she passed it had gathered nothing but dust because Tyrell and Paige did not read anything that did not appear on a phone screen. "You know," I said, my voice trembling just enough to sell the performance, "I think I might have put that paper in a book." The silence in the room broke instantly. Paige dropped the dish towel she was holding. Tyrell froze mid-massage on my left foot. "A book?" Tyrell asked, his eyes darting to the hundreds of volumes lining the walls. "Which book, Dad?" I frowned, rubbing my temples as if the effort of thinking was physically painful. "I do not know, son." I was confused. The doctor said the anesthesia messes with the short-term memory. I just remember opening a book, maybe a blue one, or a red one. I wanted to keep it safe, like pressing a flower. Paige was already moving. She marched into the den, her eyes scanning the shelves with a mixture of greed and exhaustion. There were easily 500 books on those shelves. "Well," she said, snapping her fingers at Tyrell, "do not just sit there rubbing his feet. Start looking." "What about Dad?" Tyrell asked. "He is fine," Paige hissed. "He ate his soup." "Get up, Tyrell. We have to find that ticket." I watched from the comfort of the sofa as my son and his wife descended upon my wife's legacy like a swarm of locusts. At first they were careful. They pulled books out one by one, shaking them gently by the spine, hoping the slip of paper would flutter out. They checked the blue books first, then the red ones. Nothing. "Check them all," Paige commanded, her voice rising an octave. He said he was confused. It could be in any of them. The carefulness evaporated. Desperation took over. Tyrell started grabbing handfuls of paperbacks, ripping them off the shelves and fanning the pages aggressively. Books fell to the floor with heavy thuds. Dust billowed into the air, creating a haze in the afternoon sunlight. I watched Paige grab a vintage copy of Invisible Man, a book Coretta had treasured. She shook it violently, and when nothing fell out, she tossed it onto a pile of other discarded volumes, bending the cover. My heart clenched, but I kept my face impassive. They were destroying the physical memories of this house, but I reminded myself that they had already destroyed the spirit of it long ago. "Faster." Paige coughed, waving away the dust cloud. "It has to be here." I leaned back, closing my eyes, listening to the sound of tearing paper and thumping books. It sounded like rats scurrying in the walls. They were sweating. I could hear Tyrell grunting with effort, climbing the small ladder to reach the top shelves. "Is this it?" Tyrell yelled, holding up a bookmark. "No, you idiot, that is a piece of cardboard," Paige screamed back. "Keep looking." I let them dig for an hour. I let them turn the orderly library into a disaster zone. The floor was littered with literature. The air was thick with dust mites. They were coughing, sneezing, and cursing each other under their breath. I heard Paige mutter that I was a senile old bat who should have been put in a home years ago. I heard Tyrell agree, saying he wished I had just stayed in the hospital so they could have sold the books by the pound. It was music to my ears. I decided it was time to turn the screw a little tighter. I needed to ensure they were completely pliable, completely desperate before I reeled them in. "Tyrell," I called out, my voice weak and raspy. "What, Dad?" He barked from the den, sounding out of breath. "I need my reading glasses," I said, and the folder from my nightstand, the blue one. Tyrell appeared in the doorway, covered in dust, his hair wild, his shirt stained with sweat. He looked at me with open hostility. "Why?" he asked. "We are busy looking for your $80 million, Dad. Can the reading wait?" I sighed, shifting on the sofa and clutching my chest. "It is not for reading," I said. I feel so tired, Tyrell. My heart feels heavy. I do not think I can manage this house anymore. The stairs, the maintenance, it is too much." Tyrell's expression shifted, the hostility dampening slightly, replaced by curiosity. "What are you saying, Dad?" I pointed to the basement door. "Go get the blue folder from the nightstand downstairs. I drafted some papers a few months ago, just in case. I think I am ready to sign them. It is a power of attorney and a deed transfer. I just want to give you the house, Tyrell. You and Paige. I just want to rest." Tyrell stood frozen for a second, processing the words. Deed transfer. Power of attorney. This was the Holy Grail. This was what they had been plotting for in the dark. This was the condo with the pool. He did not walk to the basement. He ran. I heard him thundering down the stairs. Moments later, he sprinted back up, clutching the blue folder I had planted there before I left for the hospital. It contained a very official-looking document that I had typed up myself using legal jargon I found on the internet. It looked real. It had lines for signatures and dates. He practically threw it into my lap. "Here, Dad," he said, breathless. "Here is the folder. Where are your glasses?" I patted my pockets. "I do not know," I said helplessly. "I cannot see the lines without them. I need to make sure I am signing the right spot." Paige appeared in the doorway holding a copy of War and Peace by the cover, letting the pages hang open. She saw the folder. She saw the look on Tyrell's face. "What is happening?" she asked. "He wants to sign over the house." Tyrell whispered, his voice shaking with excitement. "He wants to give us power of attorney." Paige dropped the book. It hit the floor with a loud bang. Her eyes went wide. She looked at me, and suddenly the venom was gone, replaced by that sickly sweet mask she wore when she wanted something. "Oh, Langston," she cooed, rushing over to me, ignoring the dust on her clothes. "That is so sensible of you. You really do need to rest. We can take care of everything." "Find my glasses," I said, leaning my head back against the cushion. "I cannot sign without them, and my hand, it is shaking so bad." I held up my right hand and let it tremor uncontrollably. "We will find them," Paige promised. "Tyrell, look for the glasses. Check the kitchen. Check the bathroom. I will check the den again." They went back to work, but with a new frantic energy. They were not just looking for a lottery ticket anymore. They were looking for the keys to the kingdom. They tore through the drawers. They upended the couch cushions. They were dismantling the house piece by piece, driven by a greed so pure it was almost impressive. I watched them for another 20 minutes. They were sweating profusely. Paige broke a nail and screamed but kept looking. Tyrell banged his shin on the coffee table and cursed but kept limping around. They were suffering. They were working harder for me in this one afternoon than they had in the last 5 years combined. I decided it was time for the mercy kill. Or rather, the kill. "Wait," I said, sitting up straight. They both froze, turning to look at me. "What is it?" Dad Tyrell asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. I remember I said slowly, my eyes widening as if a memory had just surfaced from the fog of my senility. "You remember the glasses?" Paige asked. "No," I said. "The ticket." The room went deadly silent. "The Bible," I whispered. "Coretta's Bible. The big leather one. I put it in there to bless it." Tyrell and Paige looked at each other. Then they looked at the den. There was one shelf they hadn't touched yet, the top shelf in the center where the oversized family Bible sat collecting dust. It was the only book Coretta had forbidden anyone from moving. Tyrell lunged for the ladder. Paige was right on his heels, grabbing his belt loop. "Move, Tyrell!" she shrieked. "Get it!" Tyrell scrambled up the ladder. He grabbed the heavy leather book. It was thick, bound in black leather with gold lettering. He almost dropped it in his haste. He climbed down, jumping the last 2 steps. Paige snatched it from his hands. She placed it on the coffee table right in front of me. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely open the cover. "Open it," I commanded softly. She flipped the cover open. She flipped past the family tree page where my name and Coretta's name were written in calligraphy. She flipped past the Old Testament. She flipped through the Psalms, and there it was. Pressed between the pages of Proverbs, right at the verse that says, "Greedy men bring trouble to their families," lay the slip of paper. It was the photocopy I had made at the hotel, crumpled and stained to look authentic. Paige let out a scream that sounded like a steam whistle. "There it is!" she yelled, grabbing the paper. "There it is!" She held it up to the light. Tyrell crowded around her. They were laughing. They were hugging. Tyrell actually lifted Paige off the ground and spun her around. "We found it." Tyrell shouted, tears streaming down his face. "We found it. We are rich. We are rich." They were jumping up and down in the middle of the ruined library, surrounded by the desecrated remains of my wife's collection, celebrating their victory. They looked at me with eyes full of triumph. They thought they had won. They thought they had the money, and the house, and the power. Before I reveal what happened next, pause for a moment and comment the number 80 below. So I know you're still here with me, then keep watching, and you'll understand why that number matters and what follows. And just a quick note, parts of the story ahead are shaped for narrative and reflection and may not fully reflect real events. If that's not for you, this is a good place to stop watching. I smiled a weak, confused smile. Did we win? I asked, my voice trembling. Yes, Dad, Tyrell said, rushing over and hugging me so hard my ribs ached. We won. You won. $80 million. And the house? I asked, pointing to the blue folder. We will handle that too. Tyrell promised, pulling away. We will call the lawyer right now. We will get everything sorted. You do not have to worry about a thing. Good, I said, closing my eyes and letting my head drop back. Good. I am so tired. You rest, Dad, Paige said, her voice dripping with satisfaction as she smoothed out the crumpled photocopy. You just rest. We are going to take care of everything. I listened to them celebrating in the kitchen, popping open a bottle of champagne they had likely bought with my credit card. I listened to them planning their new life. I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by the mess they had made. I looked at the blue folder in my lap. I looked at the empty spot on the shelf where the Bible used to be. They were so happy. They were so sure. I reached into my pocket and touched the key to the safety deposit box where the real ticket sat safe and sound. Enjoy the champagne, I thought. It is the last thing you will ever taste that you did not pay for with your own sweat. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now all I had to do was wait for the lawyer to arrive and spring the steel jaws shut. The doorbell rang at exactly 4 in the afternoon, cutting through the champagne-fueled celebration in the living room like a knife. Tyrell froze mid-laugh, his hand gripping the neck of the expensive bottle. Paige looked at the door with wide, panicked eyes, as if she expected the police to burst in and snatch the lottery ticket away. I sat in my recliner, the new beige one they had bought to replace my old leather chair, and suppressed a smile. I knew exactly who was at the door because I had texted him the code word green light 20 minutes ago. It is probably the pizza, Tyrell said, his voice shaking slightly. We ordered pizza, right? I do not think so, son, I said, my voice raspy and weak. It sounded like a heavy knock. A lawyer knock. Tyrell went to the window and peered through the blinds. He turned back to us, his face pale. It is an old guy in a suit, he whispered. He has a briefcase. A big one. Paige scrambled to hide the lottery ticket photocopy under a magazine. Open it, she hissed. Act normal. Tyrell opened the door. Steinberg stood there looking like the grim reaper of the legal world. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than Tyrell's car, and his expression was grave enough to bury a man. He did not smile. He did not extend a hand. He just walked past Tyrell into the living room, his eyes scanning the mess of books on the floor and the half-empty champagne bottle on the table. Mr. Bennett, Steinberg said, nodding at me. I came as soon as I received your message. Who are you? Paige demanded, stepping forward with her hands on her hips, trying to assert dominance in a room she no longer owned. I am Arthur Steinberg. Steinberg replied, his voice a deep baritone that commanded immediate silence. I have been Langston's attorney for 30 years. He contacted me regarding a matter of significant financial import. I assume this is about the ticket. Tyrell and Paige exchanged a look. They realized that the confused old man had been lucid enough to call a lawyer. Yes, Tyrell said, puffing out his chest. My dad won. We won $80 million. Steinberg did not look impressed. He looked worried. He sighed a long, heavy sound that sucked the joy right out of the room. He walked over to the dining table, cleared a space among the dirty dishes, and set his briefcase down. The click of the latches opening sounded like gunshots. You have a problem, he stated flatly. A very big problem. What problem, Paige asked, her voice shrill. We have the ticket. We have the numbers. You have a tax liability that will cripple you, Steinberg said, pulling out a stack of documents thick enough to choke a horse. And you have exposure. Terrible exposure. I ran a preliminary check on the Lottery Commission's protocols. Because Langston purchased the ticket publicly and because his face is all over the news due to that robbery incident, his identity is already compromised. So what Tyrell said, everyone knows he is a hero, everyone knows he is a target, Steinberg corrected. And more importantly, the IRS knows. Do you know what the federal inheritance tax rate is for a direct transfer of wealth this size? If Langston were to pass away before the funds are fully seasoned in a trust. Tyrell shook his head dumbly. 40%, Steinberg lied smoothly, plus state taxes, plus luxury tax. If Langston cashes this ticket as an individual and then tries to share it with you, or if God forbid he dies next week, you will lose nearly 60% of that money to the government. 60%. Paige gasped, clutching her chest. That is almost half. That is millions. It is $50 million gone, Steinberg said. Poof. Vanished into the pockets of politicians. The room went silent. The greed in their eyes was replaced by a sheer primal terror of losing money they did not even have yet. And that is not the worst of it. Steinberg continued relentlessly. I have sources. There are rumors of distant relatives coming out of the woodwork, cousins from Georgia, an aunt in Detroit, people who saw the news report. If this money hits Langston's personal account, they will sue. They will tie this money up in probate court for 10 years. You will be bankrupt fighting legal battles before you see a dime. Tyrell sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. It is a nightmare, he moaned. We finally catch a break and they want to take it all. I watched them. They were hooked. They were terrified. Now it was time to offer the lifeline. Is there nothing we can do, Arthur? I asked, making my voice tremble. I just want my family to be taken care of. I do not want the government to take it. Steinberg looked at me, then at Tyrell and Paige. He took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly, letting the tension build. There is one way, he said. It is complex. It is aggressive. But it is the only way to protect the principal and avoid the tax hit. What is it? Paige asked, leaning forward, her eyes hungry. We will do anything. We create a blind family trust, Steinberg explained. The Bennett Family Trust. We structure it so that the ticket is claimed by the trust, not by Langston personally. That creates a legal shield against lawsuits and bypasses the inheritance tax completely because the trust never dies. That sounds perfect, Tyrell said. Let us do that. It is not that simple, Steinberg warned. To establish the trust as a pre-existing legal entity capable of claiming the prize without triggering an audit, it must be capitalized immediately. It needs assets, hard assets. It needs to show that it is not just a shell corporation created yesterday for the lottery. It needs history. What kind of assets? Paige asked. Real estate, Steinberg said, pointing a finger at the floor. This house, and any vehicles, any savings. Everything must be consolidated into the trust immediately. Today, before the ticket is cashed, the trust must own the property to establish domicile. I saw the hesitation in Paige's eyes. She was greedy, but she was also calculating. So we put the house in the trust, she said slowly. And who controls the trust? Steinberg pulled out a document entitled Irrevocable Trust Agreement. The grantor controls the trust, he said, gesturing to me. Langston. He is the one with the ticket. He is the origin of the wealth. He has to be the primary trustee for the first 90 days to satisfy the lottery commission. After 90 days, he can appoint beneficiaries. Beneficiaries, Paige repeated. That would be us, correct, Steinberg said. But to make this legal, to prove to the IRS that this is a consolidation of family assets, you two need to sign quitclaim deeds. You need to formally renounce any current claim to this property or Langston-S assets so they can be fully absorbed by the trust. You have to empty your pockets to fill the vault. Logic defied gravity, but greed defied logic. Steinberg was telling them that to get the $80 million, they had to give up the house completely. They had to sign it over to me. They had to make me the sole undisputed owner of everything so that the magical trust could protect the lottery money. It was the classic con. You have to give money to get money. You have to give up the shrimp to catch the lobster. I do not know, Tyrell said, looking at me. Sign over the house. We just moved in here, Dad. We have rights. I let out a long, wheezing cough, clutching my chest dramatically. You are right, son, I rasped. It is too much paperwork. I am tired. Maybe we should just pay the taxes. 40% is not so bad. We will still have, what, 30 million left after the lawsuits. That is enough. 30 million, Paige shrieked. Are you crazy, Langston? We are not throwing away $50 million just because you are lazy about paperwork. She turned to Tyrell, her eyes blazing. Sign the papers, Tyrell. But the house, he protested. It is a $500,000 house, Tyrell, she snapped. We are talking about 80 million. Do the math. Who cares about this dusty old house when we can buy a mansion in Malibu? We sign the papers, we wait 90 days, and then we are set for life. Do not be an idiot. Tyrell looked at Steinberg. Is that true? If we sign this, we get the full amount tax-free. Steinberg nodded, solemn as a judge. It is the only way to guarantee the full payout. But I need to know now. The lottery office closes at 5 tomorrow. If we do not have the trust established by morning, we miss the window for this fiscal quarter and the taxes go up another 5%. 5%, Page whispered, horrified. Give me the pen. Steinberg slid the documents across the table. He produced a heavy, expensive fountain pen, the kind that made a scratchy, authoritative sound on paper. First, the quitclaim deed, he said, pointing to the line. This transfers all rights, title, and interest in the property at 452 Martin Luther King Boulevard to Langston Bennett solely. Page snatched the pen. She did not even read the text. She signed her name with a flourish. She handed the pen to Tyrell. Sign it, she commanded. Tyrell hesitated. He looked at me. For a second, I saw a flicker of doubt. Maybe he remembered that I was the one who bought the house. Maybe he remembered that he had never actually contributed a dime to the mortgage. Or maybe he just felt the cold wind of vulnerability blowing through the room. Dad, he said, you will put us on the trust, right? After the 90 days. I looked him in the eye. I looked at the son who had told me to call a taxi because the game was tied. Of course, son, I said softly. I said, family takes care of family. He believed me. Or he wanted the money so bad he forced himself to believe me. He bent down and signed the deed. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. It sounded like a lock clicking shut. Steinberg took the deed and slid the next document forward. Now the waiver of beneficiary rights, Steinberg said. This states that until the trust is fully vested in 90 days, you have no legal claim to the assets held within. This prevents the distant relatives from suing you directly. It protects you. Protects us. Page said, nodding. Smart, very smart, she signed. Tyrell signed. They signed away their rights to the house. They signed away their rights to my car. They signed away their rights to my bank accounts. They signed a document that explicitly stated they were tenants at will with no equity interest in the property. They legally evicted themselves in their own dining room, thinking they were buying a ticket to paradise. Steinberg gathered the papers. He checked the signatures. He pulled out his notary stamp from his bag. He stamped each document with a heavy thud. Bam, bam, bam. It is done, Steinberg said, closing the folder. The house is now legally the sole property of Langston Bennett. The trust structure is active. Page let out a squeal of delight. We did it. We are rich. She grabbed the bottle of warm champagne and took a swig straight from the bottle, classy as ever. When do we cash the ticket? She asked, wiping her mouth. Tomorrow morning, Steinberg said, standing up. I will pick Langston up at 9. We will go to the lottery commission together. You two should stay here. Keep a low profile. We do not want the press seeing you until the funds are secured. Perfect, Page said. We will start packing. I want to be out of this dump by the weekend. I looked at Steinberg. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. The trap was sprung. The steel jaws had clamped down on their legs, and they were too drunk on greed to feel the pain yet. I am tired, I said, standing up. I think I will go downstairs. No, Dad, Tyrell said magnanimously. You take the master bedroom. Really, we insist. We can sleep on the air mattress tonight. After all, you are the grantor. I looked at him. He was offering me my own bed in my own house as if it were a favor. No, I said. I like the basement. It is quiet down there, and I have a lot of thinking to do. I walked to the basement door. I did not look back. I went down the stairs into the cool, damp dark. I sat on the air mattress. I pulled the photo of Coretta out of my bag. We got them, honey, I whispered. We got them. Upstairs, I could hear them celebrating. They were dancing, they were shouting, they were spending money they would never touch. I lay back and closed my eyes. I slept better on that deflated air mattress than I had slept in years. Because I knew that tomorrow morning the sun was going to rise on a brand new world. A world where Langston Bennett was the king and the usurpers were about to be exiled to the wilderness. The silence in the house was replaced by a frantic, manic energy that vibrated through the floorboards. We were in the eye of the storm, the waiting period between the signing of the papers and the supposed arrival of the money. Steinberg had told them that establishing the trust and verifying the ticket with the lottery commission would take 48 hours. He called it a standard compliance hold. To Tyrell and Paige, 48 hours sounded like a lifetime, but instead of waiting in humble gratitude, they decided to spend the time destroying their financial future. Paige disappeared early in the morning before I had even finished my coffee. She didn't say goodbye. She just grabbed her purse and the keys to Tyrell's sedan and peeled out of the driveway. When she returned 4 hours later, she wasn't driving the sedan. She was behind the wheel of a Porsche Cayenne. It was white, blindingly white, like a pristine iceberg floating in my cracked asphalt driveway. She honked the horn repeatedly, a sharp, aggressive sound that brought neighbors peering out from behind their curtains. I watched from the living room window as she stepped out. She was wearing sunglasses that covered half her face and carrying shopping bags from stores that didn't even exist in our zip code. She marched into the house and threw the keys on the coffee table right next to my foot. "Look at that beauty," she said, breathless with adrenaline. 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. I looked at the key fob. It was heavy and sleek. "How did you pay for that, Paige?" I asked, my voice quiet. "The money has not cleared yet." She laughed, a dismissive sound that grated on my nerves. "Credit Langston." The power of leverage. I went to the dealership and showed them the photo of the ticket. I showed them the email from Steinberg about the trust. They practically licked the floor. I put $50,000 down on the platinum card and financed the rest at a ridiculous interest rate, but who cares? We will pay it off in cash on Friday. She didn't stop at the car. She pulled out her iPad and started showing Tyrell photos of mansions. "I put a deposit on the villa in Silver Creek," she announced. "It is non-refundable, but it secures the property, $10,000. And I ordered the Italian marble sofa for the new living room, another $15,000. She was swiping her credit cards like they were magic wands. I knew for a fact that those cards were already near their limit. She must have called the banks, screamed at supervisors, promised them millions just to get the limits raised for this spree. She was digging a hole so deep she would never see the sun again. She was buying a lifestyle she hadn't earned with money she didn't have, based on a lie she was too greedy to question. I sat there clutching my cane, watching her spend. Every dollar she charged was another nail in her coffin. She was so confident, so arrogant. She didn't look at me as a person anymore. I was just the ATM that dispensed the cash to cover her madness. But if Paige's greed was a fire, Tyrell's arrogance was an explosion. He had been pacing the house all morning, agitated and restless. Seeing Paige's new car seemed to snap something inside him. He didn't want to just buy things. He wanted to settle scores. He wanted to feel powerful. "I am going out," he announced, grabbing the keys to the sedan Paige had abandoned. "I have some business to finish." I knew exactly where he was going. He was going to the logistics warehouse where he used to work. He had told me he quit because the management didn't respect his vision. The truth, which I learned from a friend who worked security there, was that Tyrell had been fired for sleeping in a forklift and stealing copper wire. He had left in shame, escorted out by guards. Now he was going back. I did not try to stop him. I let him go. I sat in the living room and waited. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from a local community Facebook group. Someone had started a live stream titled, "Local Lottery Winner Goes Crazy." I clicked the link. The video was shaky, filmed on a cell phone. It showed Tyrell standing in the middle of a loading dock wearing his best Sunday suit, which looked ridiculous amidst the pallets and forklifts. He was screaming. "Look at you all," he yelled, pointing a finger at a group of workers in neon vests. "You are ants. You are nothing. I made $80 million today. I could buy this whole building and turn it into a parking lot for my cars." He walked up to a man in a white shirt, presumably the manager who had fired him. Tyrell got right in his face. "Remember me, Henderson," he sneered. "Remember when you said I was lazy? Remember when you said I would never amount to anything? Who is the loser now? I am rich. I am a king. And you are just a little man with a clipboard." Tyrell knocked the clipboard out of the man's hand. Papers scattered across the dirty concrete. Tyrell laughed, a manic, unhinged sound. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash, likely the last of the emergency fund he had stolen from my drawer upstairs. He threw the bills into the air, making it rain on the loading dock. "Pick it up," he shouted at his former colleagues. "Pick it up, peasants. That is more than you make in a week." Security guards rushed into the frame. Tyrell didn't run. He let them grab him, still laughing. "Do not touch the suit," he screamed as they dragged him toward the exit. "This suit costs more than your life." The video ended. I put the phone down. My chest felt tight, not from surgical pain, but from a profound, hollow sadness. That was my son. That was the boy I had taught to fish. That was the boy I had taught to change a tire. Somewhere along the way, the rot had set in so deep it had consumed him whole. He wasn't just lazy, he was malicious. He wanted to hurt people. He wanted to make others feel small, to make himself feel big. He came home an hour later disheveled and sweating, but with a gleam of triumph in his eyes. "I handled it, Dad," he bragged, pouring himself a drink. I closed that chapter. They know who Langston Bennett's son is now. Yes, I thought. They certainly do. And soon the police will know too. Evening fell. The house quieted down. The manic energy of the day began to fade into a heavy exhaustion. Tyrell passed out on the sofa, still wearing his suit jacket. Paige was on the back patio, pacing back and forth with a glass of wine and her phone pressed to her ear. I needed water. I walked to the kitchen, moving silently in my socks. The patio door was cracked open, just a sliver to let in the cool night air. I could hear Paige's voice clearly. She wasn't shouting anymore. She was using her business voice, the one she used when she was trying to negotiate a discount or return a dress she had already worn. "Yes, Sunnyvale Estates," she said. "I am looking at the brochure right now. I want the Platinum Suite, the one with the private garden view." I froze. Sunnyvale Estates was the most expensive assisted living facility in the state. It was where the senators and the retired judges went to die. "Yes, money is no object," she continued. "We want the best for him." "For the first month." She paused, listening to the person on the other line. "Yes, you heard me correctly. Just 1 month. We need to park him somewhere comfortable while the legalities are finalized. We want him happy and quiet for 30 days. She took a sip of wine. I could hear the liquid slosh in the glass. "After the 30 days, once the trust assets are fully transferred to our personal accounts, we will be discontinuing the private funding. Yes, I understand that means he will have to be moved." She laughed. It was a cold, dry sound that chilled me more than the night air ever could. "Oh, do not worry about where he goes after that. Transfer him to the state ward. Send him to the charity wing. I really do not care, as long as he is out of the Platinum Suite and out of my life. He thinks he is moving into the new mansion with us. Can you believe that? He smells like old medicine and dusty books. I am not having that in my new house. Give him 30 days of luxury so he signs whatever we need him to sign and then flush him." I stepped back from the window. My hand went to my chest, instinctively covering the scar. The beat of my heart was steady, strong. It didn't flutter, it didn't break. Flush him. That was their plan. That was the end game. A month of fake kindness, a month of a nice room with a garden view, just long enough to drain the accounts and secure the power. And then the state ward, the smell of bleach and boiled cabbage, the loneliness. The end. They didn't just want the money. They wanted to erase me. They wanted to consume everything I had ever built, everything I was, and then discard the husk. I turned around and walked back to the basement door. I didn't look at Tyrell sleeping on the sofa, dreaming of his revenge. I didn't look at the white Porsche in the driveway. I went down into the dark. I sat on the air mattress. I took out my phone. I dialed Steinberg's number. It was late, but I knew he would answer. "Langston," he said, his voice gravelly with sleep. "Is everything all right?" "It is done," I said. My voice was calm, calmer than it had been in days. "Did they sign?" Steinberg asked. "They signed," I said. "And they spent. And they confessed." "Confessed to what?" "To everything," I said. "To who they really are." There was a pause on the line. "Are you ready for tomorrow, Langston? It is going to be ugly." I looked at the concrete walls of my basement prison. "Bring the police, Steinberg," I said. "Bring the new owner. And bring a camera crew if you can. I want everyone to see this." I hung up. I lay down in the dark, but I didn't close my eyes. I watched the shadows stretch across the ceiling. Tomorrow was the party. They had invited their friends. They had invited the people Tyrell wanted to impress. They were going to announce the winnings. They were going to celebrate their ascension. But they didn't know that the floor they were dancing on had already been sold out from under them. They didn't know that the man in the basement wasn't a victim. He was the executioner, and the guillotine was sharp heavy and ready to drop. The pain in my chest woke me up at 3 in the morning. It was not a dull ache this time. It was a sharp stabbing sensation that radiated from my sternum all the way down to my fingertips. My prescription pain medication was supposed to be on the nightstand next to the air mattress, but the bottle was empty. I remembered seeing Tyrell move a box of medical supplies upstairs earlier in the day during their frantic search for the lottery ticket. He must have taken the refill bottle with him either by accident or because he thought he might need it for his own recreational use. I knew I could not make it through the night without that medicine. My heart felt like it was trying to beat its way out of a cage of barbed wire. I pushed myself up from the mattress, groaning as my joints popped. The basement was freezing. I wrapped my thin robe tighter around my body and walked to the stairs. Every step was a battle against gravity. I climbed slowly, my hand gripping the rail until my knuckles turned white. When I reached the top of the stairs, the house was silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic from the highway. I walked down the hallway toward the master bedroom. My bedroom. Or at least it used to be. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating the transformation Paige had wrought. The walls were that pale, sickly green she loved. My heavy oak bed frame was gone, replaced by a low platform bed with white sheets that looked too pristine to touch. Yoga mats were rolled up in the corner, and a large mirror leaned against the wall, reflecting my hunched, broken silhouette. I moved toward the ensuite bathroom, hoping to find my pills in the medicine cabinet. As I passed the vanity table, something caught my eye. It was sitting atop a pile of fashion magazines, shoved carelessly to the side as if it were a piece of junk. It was Coretta's jewelry box. It was a small mahogany chest lined with red velvet. I had bought it for her on our 10th anniversary. It was one of the first nice things I could afford to give her. She treated that box like the Ark of the Covenant. She polished the wood every week. She kept it organized and pristine. Seeing it there, sitting crooked on a pile of glossy paper with a coffee ring staining the wood lid, made my stomach turn. I forgot about the pain in my chest. I forgot about the medicine. I walked over to the vanity and reached out with a trembling hand. I lifted the lid. Inside it was a chaotic jumble. Necklaces were knotted together in a gold and silver tangle. Rings were scattered loose, not in their slots. But my eyes went straight to the small compartment in the center. The place where Coretta kept her most prized possession, her pearl earrings. They were Akoya pearls. I had saved for 2 years to buy them for her 50th birthday. They were not just jewelry, they were a promise. Coretta had worn them to church every Sunday. She had worn them to Tyrell's graduation. She had worn them in the casket when I said goodbye to her. I had taken them off her before they closed the lid because she had made me promise to save them. Save them for Tyrell's wife, she had said. Or his daughter. Keep them in the family Langston. I saw the creamy white spheres sitting in the velvet groove. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. They were still there. I reached out to touch them. I needed to feel something of hers. I needed to feel the cool, smooth weight of the only woman who had ever truly loved me. My finger brushed against the pearl. It felt warm. I frowned. Real pearls are cold to the touch. They take time to warm up to the skin. These felt like room temperature plastic. I picked one up. It was light, too light. It felt like nothing in my palm. I brought it closer to my eye, squinting in the dim light. Near the post where the gold met the sphere, there was a tiny seam, a ridge of plastic molding. I rubbed my thumb over the surface. A flake of pearlescent paint chipped off, revealing dull white plastic underneath. My heart stopped beating for a second. The silence in the room became a roar in my ears. They were fake. They were cheap costume jewelry replicas, the kind you buy at a drugstore for $5. I dropped the fake earring back into the box as if it had burned me. I started digging through the tangled mess of chains and rings. Where were they? Maybe she moved them. Maybe she hid them. Then I saw it. A crumpled piece of yellow paper shoved into the corner of the box underneath a tangled gold chain. I pulled it out and smoothed it against the mahogany wood. It was a receipt. A pawn shop receipt from a place called Quick Cash on 5th Street. Date: October 12th, 1 month ago. Item: vintage Akoya pearl earrings, 14K gold posts. Amount: $500. I stared at the number. $500. Those earrings were worth $2,000 easy. But that wasn't the point. They sold my dead wife's legacy. They sold the last piece of Coretta I had left to give to the future. And for what? I looked closer at the receipt. Stapled to the back of it was another slip of paper. A credit card receipt from a nightclub called Velocity. The date was the same. October 12th. The amount was $480. VIP bottle service, Grey Goose vodka, They sold her pearls to go to a club. They traded 40 years of love and sacrifice for one night of vodka and loud music. They pawned my wife's soul for a hangover. I felt a physical blow to my gut. I gripped the edge of the vanity to keep from falling. The pain in my chest incision flared hot and vicious, but it was nothing compared to the cold, dead feeling spreading through my veins. I looked at the bed where Tyrell and Paige were sleeping. They were tangled in the expensive sheets, breathing softly. My son. My daughter-in-law. I remembered Tyrell as a boy sitting on Coretta's lap touching those earrings. Pretty mama, he used to say. I remembered Paige crying at our dinner table, saying she couldn't wait to have a piece of jewelry as beautiful as those pearls one day. It was all a lie. Every smile, every hug. Every moment I thought we were building a family, it was just a long con. They were not family. They were parasites. They had eaten everything. They had eaten my money. They had eaten my patience, and now they had eaten my memories. I looked at the fake plastic pearl sitting in the velvet box. It looked like a dead eye staring back at me. I did not scream. I did not wake them up. I did not throw the jewelry box through the mirror. Something inside me died in that moment. The last tiny flickering candle of hope that I had held on to for my son was snuffed out. The father in me died. The provider in me died. The man who wanted to forgive died. All that was left was Langston Bennett, the man who had survived poverty, the man who had survived the death of his wife, the man who had survived open-heart surgery. And this man was done being a victim. I carefully folded the pawnshop receipt and put it in my pocket, right next to the safety deposit box key. I left the fake pearls exactly where they were. I turned around and walked out of the room. My steps were silent. My breathing was steady. The pain in my chest was gone, replaced by a numbness that was absolute. I went back down to the basement. I sat on the air mattress. I took out my phone. I dialed Steinberg's number. It was 4 a.m, but I knew he would answer. He was an insomniac, and he knew tonight was the night everything changed. Bennett Steinberg answered on the second ring, his voice alert. "What is it? Did they find the ticket?" "No," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. It sounded like metal grinding on stone. "Then what is wrong?" "They sold the earrings, Steinberg." "What earrings?" "Coretta's pearls, the ones she wanted our granddaughter to have. They sold them last month. For bottle service." There was a long silence on the line. Steinberg had known Coretta. He had been at the funeral. He knew what those pearls meant. "I am sorry," Langston Steinberg said softly. "I am truly sorry." "Do not be sorry," I said. "Be ready." "For what?" "The play is over, Steinberg. I am done acting. I am done being the confused old man. I am done being the victim. What do you want to do?" "Tomorrow is the party," I said. "They invited everyone, their friends, the neighbors. They want to show off the big win. They want me to announce the trust. Yes, that is the plan." "Change the plan," I said. "How?" "I want everything ready for tomorrow night. I want the eviction notice printed. I want the new deed certified. I want the police on standby. And I want you to bring the video equipment." "Video equipment, yes. I installed cameras 3 days ago, Steinberg. Little ones, hidden in the smoke detectors. I have footage of them tearing apart the library. I have audio of them talking about the nursing home. I have everything." "You want to show it at the party?" Steinberg asked. "I want to burn it all down," I said. "I want to show everyone who they really are. I want their friends to see it. I want the neighbors to see it. I want them to stand in the middle of that room and feel the shame peel the skin off their bones. It will be brutal," Langston Steinberg warned. "It will be a massacre." "Good," I said, "because they didn't just steal my money, Steinberg. They stole my wife's memory. They pawned her spirit for $500. "I understand," Steinberg said. "I will make the calls. Noon tomorrow." "Make it 1 o'clock, I said. "Let them get a few drinks in. Let them feel comfortable. Let them feel rich. It will hurt more when they fall." I hung up the phone. I reached into my bag and pulled out the photo of Coretta. I traced her face with my thumb. I looked at the pearls in her ears in the photo. They were white and luminous. "I will get them back, honey," I whispered to the picture. "I will buy them back from the pawn shop first thing in the morning. And then I am going to make sure the people who did this never touch anything beautiful again." I lay back on the mattress. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. It was the last night I would ever spend in this basement. It was the last night Tyrell and Paige would ever sleep in a bed they didn't pay for. Tomorrow was execution day. and the judge, the jury, and the executioner were all lying right here on this air mattress waiting for the sun to rise. The crystal chandeliers of the grand ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton shimmered overhead, casting a golden glow on the 300 guests Paige had invited. It was a sea of designer gowns, black tuxedos, and fake smiles. These were the people Paige had spent her entire 20s trying to impress. The high society crowd from the country club she could not afford to join, the former sorority sisters who had married investment bankers, the people who had looked down on her for marrying a mechanic's son. Tonight she had brought them all here to witness her ascension. She wanted them to see her claim the throne. I stood near the entrance, leaning heavily on my cane, watching the spectacle. Steinberg stood beside me, silent as a tombstone. We watched the waiters circling with trays of caviar and glasses of Dom Perignon. I knew for a fact that Paige had put the $50,000 deposit for this party on a high-interest credit card she had opened in my name 3 days ago. She had signed the contract for the remaining $100,000 balance, promising payment within 48 hours of the trust funding. She was drinking champagne that cost $300 a bottle, paid for with money that did not exist. There she was, in the center of the room. She was wearing a silver sequined gown that hugged every curve, looking like a disco ball made of knives. She was laughing, throwing her head back, holding court. Tyrell stood next to her, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo that was slightly too tight. He was drinking scotch rapidly, his eyes darting around the room. He looked like an imposter at his own coronation. He knew he didn't belong here, but his greed was forcing him to play the part. Steinberg leaned in close to my ear. "Are you ready, Langston? Once we start this, there is no going back." I touched the pocket of my jacket where the remote control for the projector rested. I touched the other pocket where the crumpled pawnshop receipt lay. "I have been ready for 20 years, I said. The music lowered. A spotlight hit the center stage. Tyrell stepped up to the microphone. He tapped it nervously. The feedback squealed, causing the guests to wince. "Excuse me, everyone," Tyrell said, his voice booming through the speakers. "If I could have your attention." The room quieted down. 300 pairs of eyes turned toward the stage. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he continued, gaining a little confidence. "Tonight is a special night. A night of family, a night of legacy. As many of you know, my father, Langston Bennett, recently came into a significant fortune. A murmur of excitement rippled through the crowd. This was what they came for, the smell of fresh money. But more importantly, Tyrell said, gesturing toward me with a sweeping hand, "Tonight is about trust. My father is a simple man, a hard-working man, and he knows that managing an empire requires youth and vision. So tonight, he is going to officially hand over the stewardship of the Bennett family trust to me and my beautiful wife, Paige." Applause broke out. Polite golf claps. Paige beamed, waving to the crowd like a pageant queen. Dad, Tyrell called out, "Come on up here, come say a few words." The spotlight swung around, blinding me for a second. I blinked. I gripped my cane. I began the long, slow walk to the stage. The crowd parted for me. I saw their faces. They looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and pity. To them, I was just the old lucky mechanic, the stepping stone for Tyrell's success. I climbed the stairs to the stage. Tyrell reached out to help me, his hand clammy. He tried to hug me for the crowd. I stiffened, refusing to return the embrace. He pulled away quickly, covering the awkward moment with a laugh. "Here he is," Tyrell said, handing me the microphone. "The man of the hour." I took the microphone. It felt heavy in my hand, heavier than a wrench. I looked out at the sea of strangers. I looked at Paige standing in the front row, her eyes shining with avarice. I looked at Tyrell standing beside me, sweating under the hot lights. "Thank you," I said. My voice was rough, gravelly. It echoed in the large hall. "My son says this night is about family. He is right. It is about knowing who your family really is." Tyrell nodded encouragingly, thinking I was going off on a sentimental tangent. "I want to tell you a story." I continued. A story about a man who loved his son. This man was a mechanic. He worked with his hands. He came home with oil on his skin every day for 40 years. He did this so his son would never have to touch a tire iron. He did this so his son could go to college. He did this so his son could have soft hands. The room was silent. People love a rags to riches story. The son grew up, I said. He got married to a woman with expensive tastes, and the father was happy because he thought his son had found love. But then the father got sick. His heart began to fail. He needed surgery. He needed help. I paused. I looked directly at Paige. Her smile faltered slightly. And when the father was in the hospital bleeding and in pain, he asked his son for a ride home. And the son said, "No, Dad, the game is on. Call a taxi." A few nervous titters rippled through the crowd. They thought I was joking. They thought this was a roast. Tyrell laughed nervously, shifting his weight. "Good one, Dad," he whispered. "Keep it moving." And when the father got home, I continued, my voice dropping an octave, getting colder, getting harder. He found that his son and his wife had changed the locks. They let him in eventually, but they told him his bedroom was gone. They told him he coughed too much. They told him he smelled like old medicine. So they put him in the basement. The nervous laughter died. The room went dead silent. Paige's smile vanished completely. She took a half step forward, her eyes widening. "They put him on an air mattress on the concrete floor," I said, "while they slept in his bed, while they ate off his wife's china, while they drank his wine." Dad, Tyrell hissed, stepping closer to me. "Stop it. You are confused. This is not the time." I turned to him. I looked him dead in the eye. "I am not confused, son. I have never been clearer. You see, folks, my son thinks I am senile. He thinks the anesthesia rot my brain. He thinks I do not hear them talking at night through the vents. He thinks I do not know what they planned." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the remote. "They wanted the money," I said. "They wanted the $80 million, but they did not want the father attached to it. They wanted the trust, but they did not want the truster. So they made a plan to put the old man in a nursing home, a plan to declare him incompetent, a plan to erase him." Tyrell grabbed my arm. "Give me the mic." He growled, his mask of the loving son slipping to reveal the panic underneath. "Cut the mic." Someone cut the mic. But Steinberg had paid the sound guy $500 before the show started. The mic stayed on. I pulled my arm away from Tyrell. I pointed the remote at the massive projection screen behind us, the screen that was supposed to show a photo montage of our happy family life. "But why tell you?" I said. "When I can show you." I pressed the button. The screen flickered to life. The image was grainy black and white footage from a hidden camera. It showed my living room. The timestamp was 3 days ago. The audio boomed through the speakers crystal clear. Paige's voice filled the ballroom, sharp and venomous. "He smells like death, Tyrell. I cannot stand it. We have to get him out of here." The crowd gasped. It was a collective, sharp intake of breath. On screen, Paige was pacing, holding a glass of wine, kicking my old shoes out of her way. "Just give it a week," Tyrell's voice replied from the speakers. "We get him to sign the papers, then we dump him at the state facility. Who cares if it smells like cabbage? He will be dead in a year anyway." On stage, Tyrell turned white. He looked at the screen, then at the crowd. He looked like a deer in headlights. "That is fake," he shouted, waving his hands. "That is AI. That is not real." The video cut to a new clip. It was the kitchen. Tyrell was standing by the counter holding my wallet. He was pulling out the $60 I kept for emergencies. Pizza money. He laughed on the video, stuffing the cash into his pocket. The old man does not need cash in the basement. What is he going to buy? Rats? A woman in the front row covered her mouth with her hand. A man near the back booed. The video cut again. This time it was the bedroom. Paige was sitting at the vanity. She was holding Coretta's jewelry box. She was holding the pearl earrings. "These are worth a few hundred," she said, examining them. "Let us pawn them. We need bottle service tonight at Velocity. The old hag does not need them anymore. She is dead." That was the kill shot. The mention of my dead wife, the desecration of her memory. The crowd turned. The atmosphere in this room shifted instantly from shock to hostility. These people were wealthy. They were snobs. But even snobs have lines they do not cross. Selling a dead mother's jewelry for vodka was a sin even they could not forgive. Paige screamed. It was a primal sound of pure rage and humiliation. She ran toward the stage. "Turn it off," she shrieked, clawing at the air. "Turn it off, you old bastard." I pressed the button one last time. The screen went black. I looked down at Paige, who was now standing at the foot of the stage, her face twisted into a mask of hatred. "You wanted the spotlight, Paige. I said into the microphone. You wanted everyone to know who you are. Well, now they know. I turned to Tyrell. He was trembling. He looked like he was going to vomit. And you? I said, my voice quiet but amplified to thunderous volume. You wanted to be the head of the family. You wanted to be the man. Well, a man pays his own bills, son. A man protects his family. A man does not steal from his father and sleep in his bed while he rots in the cellar. Tyrell lunged for me. He lost all control. He raised his fist, ready to strike his own father on stage in front of 300 witnesses. I did not flinch. I did not move. But Steinberg did. He signaled to the side of the stage. 2 massive security guards who had been waiting in the wings stepped out. They intercepted Tyrell before he could get within 3 feet of me. One of them grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back, forcing him to his knees. Let me go, Tyrell screamed, kicking and thrashing. That is my money. He stole my money. I looked down at him kneeling on the stage. It is not your money, I said. It never was. I looked out at the crowd. The show is over, folks, I said. The bar is closed, and the check is due. I dropped the microphone. It hit the stage with a deafening thud that echoed the finality of the moment. I walked down the stairs past Paige, who was sobbing on the floor, past the stunned guests who parted for me like the Red Sea. Steinberg walked beside me, picking up his briefcase. We walked toward the exit, leaving the chaos behind us. I could hear the shouts. I could hear the accusations. I could hear the sound of a world collapsing. And for the first time in a long time, my heart didn't hurt at all. It felt light. It felt clean. It felt free. The silence in the grand ballroom was heavy enough to crush a man. Tyrell remained on his knees, his tuxedo trousers straining against the floorboards, while the 2 security guards held his arms in a vice grip. He looked up at me with eyes that were red and wet with a mixture of rage and terror. The guests who moments ago had been sipping expensive champagne were now backing away, forming a wide circle around the wreckage of my family. They watched with the morbid fascination of drivers passing a fatal car crash. Paige stood near the edge of the stage, her chest heaving, her mascara running in dark rivets down her face, ruining the makeup she had spent 3 hours applying. You cannot do this, Tyrell whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of his denial. The trust. We signed the papers. We are the beneficiaries. You said after 90 days it was ours. Steinberg stepped forward. He opened his briefcase with a sharp click that echoed through the room. He pulled out the document Tyrell and Paige had signed with such eager greed just 24 hours ago. He held it up to the light so everyone could see the signature. You did sign the papers, son, Steinberg said, his voice projecting to the back of the room without the need for a microphone. You signed a quitclaim deed transferring all rights to the house to Langston, and you signed a waiver of beneficiary rights for the Bennett Family Trust, but you did not read the fine print of the trust structure itself. What fine print? Paige shrieked, stepping forward. We are the family. Who else would the money go to? I took the microphone back. It felt cold in my hand. I established the trust yesterday, I said, my voice steady and hard. But it is not a family trust. It is a charitable remainder trust. Tyrell blinked. What does that mean? It means, I said, leaning down so he could hear me clearly, that the $80 million has already been transferred. Every single cent. It was wired this morning at 9 o'clock. Transferred where Paige screamed. To your account. No, I said. To the Coretta Bennett Foundation. The name of my late wife hung in the air. I saw a few of the older guests nod in recognition. They remembered her. They remembered her kindness. I donated the entire jackpot, I continued. The money will be used to build affordable housing for seniors. It will pay for medical care for people who have been abandoned by their families. It will ensure that no one else has to sleep in a basement because their children want a yoga studio. You gave it away, Tyrell choked out. You gave away $80 million. I did not give it away, I corrected him. I invested it in people who deserve it, people who know the value of $1, people who would never sell their mother's jewelry for a bottle of vodka. You are lying, Paige hissed. You are just saying that to hurt us. You would never throw away that kind of money. You are too cheap. You are a miser. Steinberg pulled another document from his case. It was a receipt, a wire transfer confirmation from the Lottery Commission directly to the nonprofit organization escrow account. It is done, Mrs. Bennett Steinberg said coldly. The money is gone. It is irrevocable. Langston Bennett does not have $80 million, and neither do you. The reality hit them like a physical blow. I watched the hope die in their eyes. I watched the dreams of the Malibu mansion and the private jets evaporate into smoke. They were not millionaires. They were just two broke people in expensive clothes they could not afford standing in a room full of people who now despised them. "But we still have the house," Tyrell stammered, trying to find some piece of debris to cling to in the storm. "We have the house on Martin Luther King Boulevard. The land is worth money. We can sell it. We can start over." I shook my head slowly. "You do not have the house, son. You signed the quitclaim deed. Remember, you gave it to me. So give it back." Tyrell pleaded. "Just give us the house, Dad, please. We have nowhere else to go." "I do not have the house either," I said. "What?" Paige asked. "I sold it," I said. "This morning. While you were getting your hair done. While Tyrell was picking up his tuxedo, I met with a developer. A man who has been trying to buy that block for years. I sold it to him for cash. 50% below market value just to get the deal done fast." "You sold our home," Tyrell whispered. "It was my home," I snapped. "You were just squatting in it, and the new owner takes possession in 1 hour. He is sending a crew to change the locks and clear out the debris." "Debris," Paige whispered. "Our stuff. Your stuff is on the curb," I said, "or it will be by the time you get there, if the scavengers have not gotten to it first." The devastation was total. They had nothing. No money, no house, no future. That was when Tyrell snapped. The realization that he was truly destitute, that he had played the game and lost everything, broke whatever sanity he had left. He let out a roar of pure animalistic rage. He threw his body weight against the guards. He managed to break one arm free. He lunged for me, his fingers curled into claws reaching for my throat. "I will kill you!" he screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. "I will kill you, old man!" The crowd screamed. I stood my ground. I did not flinch. I did not back down. I looked at the violence in his eyes, and I saw the stranger he had become. The security guard slammed Tyrell back onto the floor face first. I heard the air leave his lungs in a whoosh. The second guard dropped a knee onto his back, pinning him down. Tyrell thrashed and cursed, shouting obscenities that made the high society guests cover their ears. "Get him off me," Paige yelled, running toward Tyrell. "Let him go." She raised her hand to strike the guard. It was a foolish mistake. The guard caught her wrist mid-air. He did not hurt her, but he held her firm. "That is assault, ma'am," he said, his voice flat. Suddenly, the double doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. It wasn't the police. Not yet. It was the hotel manager, a man named Mr. Sterling, no relation to the lawyer. He looked furious. He was followed by 2 men in cheap suits holding clipboards. Mr. Bennett, the manager, shouted, marching through the crowd. "Mr. Tyrell Bennett." Tyrell looked up from the floor, his face pressed against the carpet. What he spat. "Your credit card was declined," the manager announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We tried to run the final balance for the event, the catering, the bar tab. It came back insufficient funds. We tried the secondary card, also declined. We tried your wife's card, declined." Of course they were declined, I thought. I had called the fraud department this morning. I had reported all the cards Paige had opened in my name as stolen. I had frozen everything. "That is a mistake," Paige shouted, struggling against the guard. "We are millionaires. Run it again." "It has been run 5 times, the manager said, his face red. "The bill is $150,000, and unless you can produce a valid form of payment right now, I am calling the authorities for theft of services." $150,000, Tyrell moaned into the carpet. "And we are next," one of the men with the clipboard said, stepping forward. He looked at Tyrell on the floor, then at Paige. "Are you Paige Bennett? Get away from me," she hissed. "You are served," the man said, dropping a stack of papers on the floor next to her. "Lawsuit from the Porsche dealership. You put a deposit down with a fraudulent check. They want the car back immediately." The second man stepped up. "And this is from the furniture store, and the travel agency, and the wedding planner." Papers rained down on them like confetti at a parade from hell. Lawsuits, summons, demands for payment. The debt they had racked up in 48 hours based on a lie was burying them alive. Steinberg looked at me and checked his watch. "Right on time," he murmured. Then came the sirens. We could hear them wailing outside, getting closer and closer. The guests began to scatter, heading for the exits, terrified of being associated with the disaster unfolding on stage. The police entered the ballroom. 4 uniformed officers. They did not look happy. They saw the security guards holding Tyrell down. They saw Paige screaming at the process server. "What is going on here?" the sergeant demanded. That woman tried to assault my staff, the security guard said, pointing at Paige, and this man tried to attack his father. Arrest them, I said, stepping forward. My voice was calm, cold. I want to press charges. Attempted assault, elder abuse, and fraud. Fraud. Paige screamed. You are the fraud. You tricked us. I did not trick you, I said. I tested you, and you failed. The police hauled Tyrell up from the floor. He was weeping now, the rage replaced by a pathetic sobbing fear. They handcuffed him. The click of the metal cuffs was the final period at the end of his sentence. Dad, please, he cried, snot running down his nose. Dad, do not let them take me. I am your son. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had left me at the hospital, the man who had put me in a basement. I have no son, I said. My son died a long time ago. They handcuffed Paige. She kicked and screamed, cursing me, cursing Tyrell, cursing the world. They dragged them out of the ballroom through the kitchen exit so they would not disturb the remaining guests. Steinberg and I followed them out to the front of the hotel. The valet stand was chaotic, but right in the center of the driveway a tow truck was backing up to the white Porsche Cayenne. No Paige screamed as the officers shoved her into the back of a squad car. Not the car. Anything but the car. The tow truck driver hooked the chains onto the axle. He lifted the pristine white SUV into the air. The alarm started blaring a rhythmic honking that sounded like a death knell for their vanity. I watched as they were driven away in the back of the police car. I watched as the tow truck dragged their dream car down the street. I watched the hotel manager talking to the police, pointing at the ballroom where the unpaid champagne was getting warm. They had lost everything. Their home, their car, their reputation, their freedom. Steinberg put a hand on my shoulder. It is done, Langston, he said. I looked at the empty driveway. I felt the cool night air on my face. My chest still ached from the surgery, but the heaviness, the crushing weight of betrayal was gone. Let us go, I said. Where to? Steinberg asked. To the airport, I said. I have a plane to catch. I did not look back. I walked away from the luxury hotel, away from the wreckage of my family. I hailed a taxi. Not a limousine, just a regular yellow cab. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. Where to, boss? Take me to the terminal, I said, and turn off the meter. I am buying the ride. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I did not have to worry about anyone but myself. I was 70 years old. I had a heart condition. I was alone. But as the taxi merged onto the highway heading toward a future I had chosen for myself, I realized I had never been more alive. The surgery had fixed my heart, but tonight I had saved my soul. 3 months have passed since the night the police dragged my son out of the Ritz-Carlton in handcuffs. The legal fallout was swift and brutal. Tyrell and Paige turned on each other before they even made bail. Their divorce was not a separation of assets because they had no assets to separate. It was a separation of debts. They fought over who was responsible for the credit card fraud, who was responsible for the bounced checks, and who was responsible for the destruction of their lives. In the end, the judge granted the divorce, but he could not grant them dignity. I heard through the grapevine that Tyrell is currently working the fry station at a fast food joint on the south side. The same boy who refused to get grease under his fingernails is now going home every night smelling of old oil and onions. A friend of mine stopped by there last week. He said he saw a manager, a kid barely out of high school, screaming at Tyrell for dropping a basket of fries. Tyrell just stood there, head bowed, taking it. He looked 20 years older. His arrogance was gone, scrubbed away by the harsh abrasive of reality. He lives in a studio apartment above a laundromat. No 85-inch television, no designer candles. Just a mattress on the floor and the sound of spinning washing machines to keep him company. Paige fared no better. When the debt collectors started calling her parents' house, her mother and father finally did the math. They realized their daughter was radioactive. They kicked her out. Last I heard, she was couch surfing with the few friends who hadn't blocked her number yet, dodging process servers and trying to sell her designer clothes on the internet for pennies on the dollar. She wanted a life of luxury. She ended up with a life of fleeing. As for me, I am thousands of miles away from the smell of fast food and the noise of the city. The sun is setting over the Mediterranean Sea, painting the water in shades of violet and gold. I am sitting on the deck of a yacht that I rented for the month. I am not alone. Steinberg is here, snoring softly in a lounge chair with a fishing hat pulled over his eyes. And 2 other friends from the old neighborhood, men who stood by me when Coretta died, men who never asked me for a dime, are playing dominoes at the table behind me. My chest does not hurt anymore. The scar is there, a silver line down my sternum, but the heart underneath it beats strong and steady. The salt air fills my lungs, clearing out the last remnants of the basement mold. I feel healthy. I feel vibrant. I feel like a man who has been given a second chance at life, and I am not wasting a single second of it. On the table next to my iced tea is a stack of folders. They are applications for the Coretta Bennett Vocational Scholarship. We launched it last month. It pays full tuition and tools for young men and women who want to learn a trade. Mechanics, plumbers, electricians, the people who build the world, the people who get their hands dirty. I read their essays. I see their hunger. I see their respect for hard work. These kids are my legacy now. They are the children I should have had. I signed the approval for a young girl from Detroit who wants to open her own garage. She reminds me of Coretta, fierce and smart. I wrote a personal note on her acceptance letter telling her to never let anyone tell her she is just a mechanic. My phone buzzed against the teak table. It was a vibration I had grown unaccustomed to as I mostly kept the device off. I picked it up. A message notification flashed on the screen. It was from a number I had deleted but recognized instantly. Tyrell. I opened the message. It was a wall of text. Dad, I am so sorry. I know I messed up. I am working hard now. I am trying. But rent is due, and I am hungry. Please, Dad, just a little help. I miss you. I love you. I looked at the words. 3 months ago, they might have twisted a knife in my gut. They might have made me feel guilty. They might have made me wonder if I had been too harsh. But today, looking at the endless blue horizon, I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no love, just a profound indifference. He was a stranger to me. A stranger who had tried to bury me and now wanted me to dig him out. I did not finish reading the message. I did not reply. I stood up and walked to the railing of the yacht. The water churned white against the hull below. I held the phone out over the edge. It was the last tether, the last line connecting me to a past that was dead. I opened my hand. The phone tumbled end over end, flashing silver in the sunset, before hitting the water with a small, insignificant splash. It sank instantly, disappearing into the deep blue. Steinberg grunted from his chair, shifting his hat. Did you drop something, Langston? Just some trash, I said, smiling. Just clearing the deck. I turned my back on the ocean and walked over to the domino table. Deal me in, I said, pulling up a chair. I am feeling lucky. My friends laughed and made room for me. The tiles clacked against the table, a rhythm of friendship and peace. The sun dipped below the horizon, ending the day. But for me, it felt like the sun was just rising. I was Langston Bennett. I was 70 years old, and my life was just beginning. I look back at my own choices, honestly. I stayed silent too long, trusted the wrong people, and paid the price. My advice is simple. Don't live like I did. Protect your dignity early. This family betrayal showed me how a family story can collapse when greed replaces respect. I turned to God for strength. When my voice failed, I asked God for clarity when lies closed in, and I thank God when truth finally stood upright. I believe blood alone does not define loyalty. This family betrayal became a warning, not an excuse for hate. I share this family story so you don't repeat my mistakes, because family betrayal often hides behind smiles, even in a family story. If this story spoke to you, leave a comment and subscribe so these lessons can reach others. Thank you for staying to the end. Please note, future stories include fictionalized elements created for educational reflection. If that's not for you, feel free to choose other content.